Okay, thanks everybody for jumping on early. We're going to get started in just a minute here. The way this is going to play out here today is that I'm going to go over a little bit of background in terms of where we're at, how we got here, history of the case. Going to jump into the all evidence. And then after that, I will open it up to questions. And people can ask me whatever they want, either about the evidence, about the case, what you think about everything, and what have you. And then we will close it out. We're going to be aiming for around 2 hours, maybe a little bit less here today. So hang tight just a minute. I'm also going to throw into the Nest the all evidence list so that you can follow along yourself if you are on the X space. Turn the volume down. Okay, just doing a quick mic check. Sound looks pretty good. Okay, I think we're just going to get started here, guys. So, for anybody who doesn't know, my name is Ashton Forbes. I have been investigating MH370 for the past 6 months. This investigation, tomorrow is the 10-year anniversary of the plane going missing. And this investigation began on social media. It began on the subreddit UFOs, where two videos reemerged after 10 years. The videos have been confirmed to have been from 10 years ago. We found many other posts that reference them going back 10 years. The very first thing on our evidence list actually has the links to the web archive of those videos. The first video is called Satellite Video, Airliner, and UFOs. And it says in the description, received March 12th, 2014, which is just 4 days after the plane went missing. It was uploaded May 19th, 2014. It also says in the description, source protected. Now, this was uploaded on an account called Regicide Anon, which is basically means King Killer. Anonymous is what that stands for. The second video we dated back is called, I don't remember the exact name of it, but it's a drone video. And it's either an MQ-1C Gray Eagle, because we can see the drone, or it's an MQ-9 Reaper. But we think it's MQ-1C Gray Eagle because they've been in operation longer, and that it's got an aerial surveillance package underneath the wings. This second video says received June 5th, 2014 in the description, and then it was published June 12th, 2014. So these videos reemerged on the subreddit UFOs around August 7th. I think that there was a post from them going back to late July, but they started to pick up steam in August. And then what happened was the entire community on Reddit began to investigate them, various aspects of it. And this is where I came into play. I started posting some of this content on Twitter because I was afraid that it might get censored, which is exactly what ended up happening to it. And I began to just amplify a lot of the content and write up, summarize a lot of the content that we were finding there. After about a week, I begged the media to look at the evidence, to look at the information. And I said that, I pinged all these media outlets, everybody, all the news people, nobody would touch it. And that's when I decided that I would pick up the reins if the media would not touch it. And that's what I did. I became an investigator. And that is also when I started MH370x, which, if you want to know how I came up with it, I just decided we put an X at the end of it since we're on Twitter and on X, as well as the idea that X usually seems to stand for this mesh of technology as well as investigation. And that's what this case really is about. So from their point forward, a few days after that, around, I believe it was August 18th or 19th, is when the first McWest debunk appeared on the UFO subreddit. It was posted by a one-day-old Reddit account that had to get manual permission to post on the UFO subreddit. The only person I can think of that would need to use an alt account like this on Reddit is McWest himself. And McWest, that very same day, within an hour or so, posted on his Metabunk website, claiming to have found this VFX in an old, obscure 3DO video game called Killing Time from the 90s. This, almost certainly beyond any shadow of a doubt, connects Mick West directly to that debunk attempt, which was subsequently used to ban all discussion of the videos from Reddit, from the UFO subreddit, which is what ended up happening. Everybody got ushered to another subreddit. At this point forward, I really started to pick up steam on Twitter. I began as a 30-follower account. I started joining spaces in the UFO community because I thought we were looking at possibly aliens or at least alien technology on these videos. And then quickly moved over into the conspiracy community as well when I started to realize that I didn't think that what we were looking at here was actually aliens, but potentially our technology that's been kept hidden from us. So since then, you guys have probably seen that there's been a huge rise in terms of interest and following that I think crescendoed in December. And I've been going on podcasts pretty much nonstop since then. I want to thank as well the people that have hosted spaces with me where I brought the topic up, even though it's been very controversial for a lot of people. And then we did most of the investigation after the case got censored from Reddit, although there were still some people on social media that were doing some investigative research as well. But the vast majority of the research after that has happened either through myself or through the other people who are the investigators on MH370x. Some of them done a lot of work. Just to name a couple, JK Philly fan has probably done the most out of anybody. And I know Arwen, even though she was a late joiner to the team, she's been putting a huge amount of work. A bunch of other people have done research as well. That research has included going back to old press conferences, all the old news articles, going through every single expert investigator who's been out there, all of their work, and trying to sift through it and determine, what information is credible, how does the information link together, and all of that. So the approach that we've taken is one of the scientific method, which is that we come up with a hypothesis, we look through the evidence, we try to figure out how the evidence fits with the hypothesis, and then if it doesn't work, then we kind of go back up to the drawing board. What I'll say before we get into this is the only evidence that we've had to throw away or discredit is the Inmarsat pings after 1839 UTC, which is the point where the plane turns into the South Indian Ocean. We simply think that doesn't happen. Aside from that, this story, this team, this investigation has used more evidence than any other story to date by far. More than anybody who's on the Netflix documentary, more than anybody who's written any books, more than anyone else who was on the independent group, by a wide margin. We brought back in about 19 witnesses at least. We haven't had to throw out like debris evidence or anything like that to fit our story. Everything is fit together. Now, it's a very difficult to believe story. And this is just a quick recap, and then we'll get into the evidence here while people are trickling in. In December, that is when the cloud debunk appeared. Now, the cloud debunk also appeared on Reddit, but it appeared on what I call the debunker subreddit, which is the Reddit that everybody was pushed to after the case was censored on UFOs. And it was started by debunkers. It was managed by debunkers. They banned me as well as anybody else who contributed positively to the case under false pretenses. And this is part of the reason why nobody should trust Reddit whatsoever. A 6-day-old Reddit account that admitted that the reason why they even got involved was that they were upset at the treatment that I gave the Corridor crew regarding some of the debunks that appeared, I believe, on the Dan and Jones podcast and afterwards. And that within 20 minutes, the 6-day-old Reddit account on an obscure textures website was able to find a picture that has matching clouds from our satellite video. They anonymously, using a burner email account, emailed the picture taker for some reason. And this was in the middle of the night, my time. And this was when that picture taker, within an hour of receiving this email, went ahead and made a debunk video and decided they were going to try to debunk the case that they had no idea about. And this was around the time when Kim.com had put out the bounty. This, just to be clear for everybody, we had a $150,000 bounty for months and months and months. No hoaxer ever came forward. The bounty was not to debunk the videos. The bounty was to have the hoaxer come forward and produce the source files for these videos because they're masterpieces. There's no discrepancies on a single frame, and they're perfectly in sync with one another, right? So who made these videos? Not to mention they're classified military equipment, right? So who is this genius, right? And we'll get to that in a minute. But so that never came forward. The person who took the pictures was offered by Kim.com $10,000 on the spot, was willing to give him the money right then and there in Bitcoin, on the contingency that they signed an affidavit that claimed that there was nothing wrong with the picture and that, you know, they really took it and what have you. That person said that they would sign it, and I have that recorded, and I ended up posting that recording later on. And then the next day, they were telling everybody on social media that they had never agreed to that, and that never happened. So I posted that video, and then that person backtracked and said, "Okay, well now I'll sign it." Right? Well, it was already too late at that point. So in addition to that, the reasons why that debunk did not hold enough water after it had been assessed after about a day or so is for multiple reasons, but the main ones are that we looked up the torrents from the old website, couldn't find them. We looked at the Wayback Machine, and the pictures only went back to 2016. The videos go from 2014. We did a reverse image search on the picture that had the clouds in it, and it would reverse image search back to Reddit, but it didn't reverse image search back to the website. So there was a number of issues that we had with the cloud picture in general, not to mention the fact that in order to create two videos that are perfectly in sync, that are have the clouds in the same spot like this from two different perspectives, you would need to create a fully 3D rendered environment, and that would rule out a 2D picture being used. In addition to the fact that just days before that debunk even appeared, we had shown that the first orb actually punctures the cloud and distorts the cloud, as well as the clouds move and evolve naturally. So at the end of the day, with regards to these videos, this is why we kept going forward. This is why I retracted my statement that I made hastily that next morning when that debunking came out. I leave it to you to decide, right? What the point of this is to present the evidence and for you to come to your own conclusions. I just give the evidence and I give my opinion on what I think happened to the plane. So once again, I want to thank you guys all for being here for this evidence review. And we're going to get into it. This will be the last one. I will be retiring from the MH370 investigation at the end of the day tomorrow. I have a couple more things that I want to push out before then. And the reason for that is just, as you can see, if you've been following, there's a lot of hostility. A lot of people are very angry at the idea that these videos could be real. And they seem to take it directly out on me. I have never made any money off these videos. I never profited off them. I never sold anything related to them. I never asked anybody for money at all. I made all of the evidence available behind no paywalls. And in real time, I didn't lead anybody on with any of this. And that's how I want it to be remembered. And that's how I want the evidence to be out there. After that, I don't know what I'm going to do. You guys can ask me that question at the end. But, you know, I think that we'll have at least done enough for the families in this case. Also, the last thing before I get into the evidence is that the reason why I've done this, the reason why I pushed forward. First of all, obviously for the families, this is probably the most mysterious incident where any plane has disappeared ever, mostly due to the fact that it happened in 2014, where we know planes just don't disappear, right? It's not like it was the Titanic or even Amelia Earhart's plane, right? Where it was well before we had hyper advanced spy satellites. And then the other reason is the videos, the technology we see in the videos. If those videos are real, it implicates the U.S. government in the disappearance of the plane, but it also implicates the U.S. government having crazy advanced technology so far beyond what we would think they might have. Technology that could be 50 or 100 or more years beyond what the public thinks is possible. Anti-gravity technology, technology where we can literally teleport an object from one place to another, right? Stuff that we would just consider to be straight up magic. And that, if that's true, that type of technology can reshape our whole planet. Even just some aspects of the technology like room temperature superconductivity can change our entire face of the Earth. So that's the main reasons why I've done this. It's not been for any type of selfish reasons whatsoever. And I would just be happy if they would just admit the truth. So let's dig into the evidence. Let's get into this thing, and then I'll let you guys ask any questions that you want to ask. I'm going to do this in kind of a narrative format where I go through the evidence, but I kind of give you guys a little bit more background and detail in terms of the evidence there. So the first one on our list here is the requirements to understand the videos to be authentic, right? And the first question people ask is, why now? Why did these videos reemerge? And that's the craziest part, is that I saw the thermal drone video back in 2014, and just like everybody else probably, and a lot of people that are still out there just thought it must be fake. I thought I couldn't explain it, but I couldn't rationalize it to be real. And since then, we've had a lot of things happen. We've seen the DoD Navy UAP videos that were declassified in 2017 that show that FLIR footage, forward-looking infrared, that's very similar to our drone video. But that drone video predates those videos by 3 years. We saw the 2019 Trump satellite image that came from USA 224 spy satellite, which was launched in 2011. And this satellite image has very similar optical look and feel as to what our satellite video looks like. Now it's a still image, and ours is actually a video. But when you think about it, you go, well, it is 2014. It would make sense that we would have full video satellite capabilities, right? After all, a video is simply a picture that are stacked on top of each other, right? Like a movie, you know? So it doesn't seem that unusual you might have that kind of capability. And then we get into the science aspects of it. And this is kind of the creepiest part. And I'll be honest with you guys, this may seem a little bit out there and esoteric, but there are certain aspects to this where I've always been interested in science. I've been looking into things like the double slit experiment, macroscopic quantum decoherence, superconductivity just as recently as this last summer. I didn't even know what it was before that LK99 stuff started to come out. And without all of this stuff out there, I don't think that we could really understand what we're looking at in these videos, or at least like make sense of it. You know, without that, I think a lot of people look at it and go, this is just unknown technology. But it's not really unknown. And this is the part where I think the scientists and engineers have reached out to me, or I've pinged them and they've been eager to talk to me, because not in all aspects of it. I think that some of my scientific understanding has evolved, but I've been really close in the way that I've been guessing about it, that we would need room temperature superconductivity to pull off the types of magnetic fields that are required for these types of effects, that we would need the wormhole papers that were published between 2020 and 2022, one of which was published by Juan Maldacena, who is an advocate for ER equals EPR, which is a unification theory of general relativity and quantum field mechanics. And then we need to understand stuff like Bose-Einstein condensates, which is this idea that you can scrunch down an object into a single point. And now it can become like a wave. And that goes back to the double slit experiment. And then the last thing we needed to understand was AI. 10 years ago, I don't think anybody would have understood that AI could be as advanced as it is right now. We've come so far in the last 10 years, and AI almost feels like it's a singularity all of in itself. How quickly it's advanced. You guys have seen the videos of AI that have come out as well, and how just remarkably advanced that is. And then you see the MH370 videos, and you can see that we've got these orbs circling around the plane, and it's not something inside those orbs. It looks like it's a pre-programmed path or route, right? And that's where we would potentially need quantum computers and AI in order to even be able to, have that kind of stuff be possible. Now, digging into the video facts here. So as I mentioned, they go back to 2014. In our satellite video, there's a ton of very weird details in them. So the perspective of the video changes 8 times. You can see them shift the screen. You can see the coordinates change, but only when the perspective changes. So this would indicate that we're not looking at a satellite that's moving here. We're looking at some kind of computer program that's using satellite data so that the X and Y coordinates shift when they move the screen around, because that's the center point of, like, if you want to think of it like a crosshair is being moved during that time. We don't know exactly where it is, but we know it's not directly on the plane, because the plane is would have a Z axis, like an up and down axis, which we only have an X and Y axis in our videos. The drone that we see cannot catch the plane. It must have intercepted it. A lot of people ask, why is the drone there? That drone must have intercepted it. So this now makes it to be a situation where either they're intercepting the plane after it went dark, which gives us about 1 hour and 20 minutes based on the coordinates. Those coordinates indicate the Nicobar Islands, which is the location where the plane turned into the South Indian Ocean. Another strange detail about this is that we've only recently uncovered that the raw telemetry data for those satellite pings that they used to map where the plane went was only made available on May 28th, 2014, which is 9 days after the video was published, the satellite video. So it's weird to think of how somebody could have come up with the exact location where this plane supposedly turned into the South Indian Ocean for their coordinates. The drone intercepting it then either had to have intercepted it within 1 hour, 20 minutes, or this had to be some type of espionage scenario where this was pre-planned ahead of time. And that's currently where I'm leaning. We'll get into that more later. The drone would have either come from Car Nicobar. There is a joint India-US base there. Port Blair, there's also a joint India-US base there. or from the Cope Tiger and Cobra Gold exercises that were going on between Thailand and the United States in that same area in the Andaman Sea. Now, if it was espionage, it could come from really any of those. If it was a situation where they're intercepting it, then the most likely place is going to either be those exercises where they would have had the most advanced equipment available, or from Car Nicobar, which have been close. Port Blair is probably too far away to get there within an hour and 20 minutes. The MQ-1C is using a electro IR camera. Now, these are super, super advanced cameras. These are not cameras infrared cameras that you buy off the shelf commercially, right? And they're multispectral, which means that it's not a situation where you can just buy a crappy camera and go, oh, this is the kind of camera they were using. These are Raytheon cameras that are super, super advanced. And after a lot of investigation, we found that the blue color, the blue and like whatever thermal is actually supposedly the default, but then the software, you can just switch it around. That's potentially why when we saw the FLIR videos, we see them in black and white, right? So that's one of the capabilities apparently of these cameras themselves. So it seems very accurate in terms of like what the camera should look like there. You can even find the MQ-1Cs if you do Google image search that have the aerial surveillance package underneath the wings, the same way that we see in the video. One quick thing on that as well is that we're not necessarily looking at the wing when we look at that drone video. That can be the camera housing. If you look at those cameras, there's like a housing that's a straight line that goes above the camera. And that might be what we're seeing when it looks like the wing. The purpose of SBIRS, Space-Based Infrared System, and SIGINT, Signals Intelligence, is tracking boats, planes, electronic signals, monitoring, intelligence, and battlefield awareness. So the missions of these satellite systems that we've uncovered are actually consistent with tracking the potential plane. This is something that wasn't even really known. The SBIRS video from Lockheed Martin is something we never knew even existed out there. We only came across it because people kept questioning, well, shouldn't the satellite be moving more? And how would they be mapping this? And what kind of resolution do they have? And then we find this video from Lockheed Martin where you can see it. It's a computer program that's mapping the Earth all the time, pulling together all that data, and then they're looking at that data and using this computer program like a Google video playback of the entire planet all the time, which is probably one of the most incredible things that we've been able to uncover as part of this investigation. Now, there are alternate sources that were uploaded later for these videos in higher quality that indicate that none of these users were potentially the original source. This is a huge detail to the authenticity of the videos. Because if Regicide Anon is not the hoaxer and there are higher quality versions that are out there afterwards, then why would Regicide Anon lie about when they received the video, right? Now, this would then, and if Regicide Anon didn't lie about the video, then they received it March 12th, 2014. That's really, really damning evidence for the videos being real. But we can't say for sure. What we can say is in one of those videos, in the Vimeo video, in the description, it says that that person who uploaded that Vimeo version believed that it was VFX, but that Regicide Anon argued with them on a forum adamantly about the authenticity of the videos. So again, if it's a hoax, then why is Regicide Anon going into such detail to try to argue that it's real? And why they would put protected in the source? We've shown that the clouds move and evolve dynamically. Now, if you look at the high quality video, I think the Vimeo one is one of the highest quality ones that's out there from the satellite. You can actually zoom back and forth in the various perspectives. The problem is those perspectives are only about 5 seconds long. But if you zoom back and forth really quickly, you'll see various edges of the clouds like disappear and get thicker, etc., just like you would imagine real clouds out there. Now, the reason why the clouds don't move that much is because if this is satellite data, these satellites are either at 1,100 kilometers away. Those are the low Earth orbit satellites. Or if these are coming from geostationary satellites, then that's 40,000 kilometers away. This is significantly further than if you just go look outside and look at the clouds outside. When you look at the clouds outside, for a 5-second period, they don't look like they're moving either. Now, the designation, one of the debunks out there from Newsweek and France 24 says that it says NRL 33. But when you look at the evidence here and you look at the bottom left, you can see that it actually does not say NRL 33. It says NRL 22. And this is important because NRL 33 is a satellite that was not launched until after the plane went missing. But NRL 22 was launched in 2006, and it just so happens to be the very first satellite launch for the SBIRS system. So this, to me, would indicate that they're trying to tell us that we're looking at the SBIRS system here. Now, the mouse moves off the screen from the bottom left and on the top right. Why is that important? Because this indicates that this is a cropped field of view, and we're looking at a much larger field of view in this satellite video. This would be indicative of somebody logged into a Citrix session and they have cropped it on their local screen from a much bigger field of view that they're looking at here. And that, again, would be indicative of these large scans that we see the Sybris system do. And then, they just want to show us a pinpointed amount of information. They even crop out the drone from the satellite video. The way we know it's a Citrix session is that you have 6 frames per second on the video in the background, and then the mouse, that black mouse that comes on the screen, is 24 frames per second. In addition to that, there's something weird about the mouse, where the mouse changes color based on whether or not it is over the water or over the clouds. It goes either to be like a black on white, or it goes to be full black, which seems like a very odd detail to add into your fake video. The plane is making a left-hand turn and descending, consistent with the max capabilities of a 777 in both videos. If it wasn't descending, this would actually be exceeding the capabilities of a 777. Now, this is important because this is one of the hardest things to fake, is to scale down the plane using a model and then have it be accurate to what the engineering capabilities are of the plane. And we'll get to that in here in a second. The user closes the window right after the plane disappears in the satellite video, indicating that this was not recorded in real time. If this video was recorded in real time, they're not going to close that out. They must have later on logged in, pulled this video up, and then recorded it, which would then be consistent with this idea that you've got full satellite playback of the entire planet. If you Google SIGINT payload, which is the signals intelligence, this is how all these assets communicate with one another. The first hit you'll find on the SIGINT payload is MQ1C Gray Eagle. Pretty odd. When the drone video zooms in, we can actually see the clouds change size and parallax. So it's dynamic parallax that you see when you see the drone video zoom in. The drone video has the least debunks to it because there's so many details that are extremely hyper-realistic on it. Also, we found that there are night vision cameras that can make nighttime look like daytime, almost identical to what our videos look like, especially the satellite video, where it will make it look illuminated and you will actually see blues and whites just like we see there as well, which would indicate that we're looking at nighttime in these videos. And that was important because when the plane was at the coordinates that we see, it would have been around 1840 UTC or 2:40 in the morning, and there was no moon out, there was no sun out. It would have been nearly pitch black. Now, some additional speculation. We had speculated that the satellite feed used to create the satellite video was from USA 229, which is NRL 34. This was also launched in 2011, around the same time that the Trump satellite picture satellite was launched. This actually has a sister satellite right next to it. It's a NOS, Naval Ocean Surveillance Satellite. So the registered on video is a 3D stereoscopic video side by side, meaning that there's actually 2 different perspectives. So some people have speculated that, okay, maybe that was converted using some type of now non-existent YouTube 3D converter. If so, then it could be using those satellites, but in a number of other satellites, the main one being like some of the geostationary satellites that are out there. But if that really is a stereoscopic satellite imagery, then USA 229 would be the one that's potentially creating that video. It's actually USA 229 is at the right time, location, and near apparent angle. At that time, we have a flyover that you can check out if you want to see it yourself, and that will show you. And I'll do that just in my stream here as well. It's a very quick video where you can see the sister satellite right next to it. You can see a bubble where we have the coordinates of the at least one of the coordinates from the satellite video, and then around 1840 UTC, you can actually see the satellites are pretty much right down there staring at the location. So to me, that's damning information at the minimum that the United States government knew exactly what happened to this plane. They had a spy satellite in the region, and we have the Malaysian Minister of Defense admitting that the U.S. has spy satellites in the region. Sentient, we found out, is the AI that's used to operationalize satellites and fuse multi-intelligence for entity resolution, geolocation, and tracking. That's the exact purpose that we would see in our videos. This was another thing that we uncovered. It was declassified, I believe, in 2011 or 2012. You guys can Google Sentient AI, and you'll find out about this. There are reports that Sentient can track aircraft movement. Once again, facilitating the idea that there's no way the United States government doesn't know what happened to this plane. We already mentioned a bunch of this stuff. We think the original videos may have been leaked to a private forum or on the dark web somewhere, although we have not been able to track that down. There's a mouse acceleration that happens. that you have the mouse moving and there's acceleration of the actual perspective moves. And there are a couple mouses we found. One's called a plural view 3D mouse with stealth or soft mouse controllers. That could be the type of asset they're using in that case, or it just could be like a middle mouse kind of button, and when you hold it down, or one of these little buttons that they have in the middle of the laptops. We're not entirely sure, but there's a different acceleration that happens there. And I already spoke about the Citrix session stuff. We also were able to potentially find the leaker. There'll be a separate section on that. No one was able to find the hoaxer of these videos, but we have, with a high probability of confidence, identified who we think the leaker of these videos was, who went to prison for 6 years. So the speculation here is that the leaker would have been a U.S. military operator who saw the events either in real time or right afterwards, had an emotional reaction, and felt necessary to leak these videos to the world. Now, the fake video requirements. Now, what does it take to fake these videos? What are the whole list of this stuff? We already mentioned that the coordinates were in the right spot and the telemetry data was not readily available until about a week later. We even have Mike Exner, who is one of the original experts who did the novel analysis of that satellite data, who said that he didn't even know the satellite data could be real until June of 2014, which postdates the videos coming out. So was the person who faked these videos like somebody who was smarter than him and the independent group experts, or what? We also had the unclaimed $150,000 bounty. That was $100,000 from Kim.com, and he's good for it, I guarantee you. As well as Chad and Sherry of the Investigate Earth threw in another $20,000. And then there was a wealthy donor who I know firsthand who has run for higher office. I talked to, and they threw in $25,000, and then I threw in $5,000 myself, which I'm not as rich as the rest of them, but I could still afford to throw that in there to round it out to $150,000. This was since, I believe, November, early November. Nobody stepped forward, as there were a couple of people that tried to step forward with no evidence, and they clearly were lying, unfortunately, but nobody stepped forward with any of the source data that we would have needed to prove that they made these videos. Now, the timing of those video uploads means you would only have between 4 days, if you think that Regicide Anon is telling the truth about when they received the videos, or 72 days to create the videos, because the published date on the first video is May 19th, 2014. So between 4 and 72 days to produce the videos, no reference copy. So if people are actually VFX experts out there, they will know that when you make a VFX, you usually have a reference copy, something that you're trying to match to make it look like that. Like when they make movies in CGI, they put all the dots on somebody, right, and they have them move around so that they can create a CGI version of that. There's nothing to compare these two. Now, some people claim to have found certain assets, but there's very little. And with respect at least to thermal, almost nothing from the thermal video has been found that could even be a remote match to that thermal video. You'd have to know how to create these realistic volumetric clouds, especially in the drone video where we have the dynamic 3D parallax. You'd have to know how to accurately animate these cameras that we have out there. There's actually a delay in the camera, in the drone camera, which is consistent with manually tracking that camera from somewhere else remotely. You'd have to know how the clouds form at low altitudes. We've proven there's cumulus clouds in these videos, which only form between 1,000 and 5,000 feet. And so you would have to know how to create those clouds to make them look good. You'd have to know how to accurately light the volumetric clouds. One of the strongest details is when the zap happens in the satellite video, it accurately illuminates the clouds in the foreground and the background. Now, some of these supposed VFX experts who try to debunk the videos have actually falsely stated that it does not, when it objectively does illuminate the clouds accurately. And that's going to be one of the most difficult details to recreate. Everybody who's tried to recreate the videos has failed at that aspect, especially because you need to accurately illuminate the volumetric clouds, and you need to create a light source. So you need to say, okay, the light source is coming from here. Where exactly would the light beams hit? This is going to, again, require a full 3D rendered environment to get that correct. This rules out a 2D picture being used. You'd have to be able to recreate exactly what MH370 looks like in 2 different videos. If you see just my profile, I've had it up since I very started, the thermal is an exact overlay of MH370. You'd have to know that turn radius. When we're talking about that engineering requirement, that turn radius, maxing out the capabilities while descending at the low altitudes. You'd have to know where that plane was exactly, as we mentioned as well. The accurate coordinate shifts. The coordinates are 6 decimal places accurate. This is exactly the same as Google Earth. So you'd have to be able to create this program where you're going to put in a coordinate shift program in the bottom of your fake hoax video, right? To me, this indicates this is definitely some type of military program that we're using here. How to animate those coordinate shifts, because when they move, you can see the numbers, moving accurately based on the shift. You have to know what the weather was like. We looked at the weather, and there was low altitude weather pattern, just like we have our cumulus clouds in the area. You have to be aware of the idea that there was a fire scenario because the plane's flying too low for contrails. So if you are faking this, you're not going to fake contrails in the back of it. You would have to have faked smoke or exhaust. We strongly believe it's smoke based on the circumstantial evidence that we'll talk about here in a minute. How to accurately create the smoke trail with the particles in both videos. You can even see in the drone video when it goes underneath the smoke trail after the plane goes past it, you can actually see the smoke stack up and get thicker as well. How to accurately animate the heat signature in the AC units. So in the center of the thermal of the drone video, you actually see there's this heat signature in there, a very elongated heat signature that's almost the same temperature as the engine. And this is consistent with where the AC exhaust ports, heat exhaust ports, are pumping out the smoke from the airplane that's going through the AC system in the airplane itself. How the accurate camera shake, additionally with it increasing in shake as they zoom in. Just like if you're using like a digital camera and you zoom in, and it's going to be, the more you move your fingers, there's going to be more shake. That exact same thing happens with the drone as well. You'd have to have knowledge of the military classified systems unknown to the public. You'd have to know that the military is using a Citrix environment. You'd have to know the frame rate difference created by capturing the satellite footage on a Citrix session. You'd have to know the special type of mouse they use or to create that acceleration in there. You'd have to know what satellites the U.S. has in operation and what their payloads are, especially if it's a stereoscopic situation that we have going on. You'd have to know what the false color IR looks like, especially in our satellite video where we are looking at it at nighttime and where they are using their own kind of like color schematic for intelligence purposes. That's completely unique. Even we don't exactly know the type of schematic that they're using in that case. It does appear like other IR videos that we've seen that it could be inverted, where cold is white and hot is black in the satellite video versus the drone video where it's just standard thermal coloring with red, being hot and black being cold. You have to know how to animate the orbs. Nobody's even come up with a plausible reason for how these orbs are scientifically accurate, especially in the drone video where we can see this forward-facing particle engine that's like ripping space apart or creating space in front of the orbs. It creates these black lines in front of the orbs as they're following like train tracks. How to animate the final frames where the orbs actually converge on the plane in the thermal video and then they flatten in the very final frame and the plane begins to blur and actually shrinks a little bit. Which is indicative of this azimuth or this kind of sphere, electromagnetic sphere being generated on the plane right before we see the singularity form. You'd have to know what that MQ-1C drone looks like, how to accurately delay that tracking that we were talking about that's being manually tracked by somebody, what the payload is, where they have the cameras underneath the wings, to be able to get that exact angle. You'd have to have better VFX skills than the lead VFX artist from Top Gun Maverick who made a Reddit post claiming that this was the hardest thing to fake from the Top Gun Maverick movie from 2022 is the scaling down of these planes when they're moving at certain speeds. You'd have to have better VFX skills than the Marvel lead VFX expert, Jeffrey Ford, who worked on Avengers Endgame, Captain America Civil War, and Spider-Man No Way Home. One of the podcasts I did, he's friends with him and said that to do all the research, come up with a storyboard, figure out all the stuff about the assets would potentially take 4 to 6 months. And we have, again, 72 days at the most. You'd have to have better understanding of physics than most PhDs, but not only that, we recently found out as well from Bob Grenier that the Aalto University paper that talks about these monopoles that we see, this heat signature in the orb, only came out after the plane went missing as well. So the science literally wasn't even in the public sphere until after these videos were made or leaked, however you want to look at it. You'd have to have the understanding of this equilateral zero-point sinusoidal pattern. That's the triangle formation that we see spinning around this plane. It's apparently an electrical engineering circuit formation. Again, and this is kind of a little bit of a joke, but how not to use low-quality 90s video game 2D visual effects in a 3D environment. But I think one of the other bigger ones is that you'd have to know that we would never find the plane, not even 10 years later. And I'm going to go ahead and update this now to 10 years because tomorrow is the anniversary. Because the moment we would have found the plane, then this whole hoax would have just fallen apart. So I leave it to you to try to figure out if that list is enough for you to be convinced that these videos are authentic, or if you think somebody could, meet all those standards of knowledge to be able to produce these videos. Now, the flight path. The flight path of the plane. This plane is leaving from Kuala Lumpur, and it's going to Beijing, so it's flying northeast in Asia. Now, like I said, we started off by trusting all the data. Like, I was full on that this plane went into the South Indian Ocean. I was even sitting there trying to convince myself that the coordinates must have a secret minus sign on them so that we could have this plane be in the South Indian Ocean. And it wasn't until later when we realized, well, in both videos, the plane's turning to the left, and we can map the coordinates and figure out what directions it could possibly be going. And we realized it must be in the Nicobar Islands. It literally could not be in the South Indian Ocean. And so, again, the only evidence we've had to throw out is the evidence of the Inmarsat pings after this plane supposedly turned into the South Indian Ocean. And one of the next pieces that I'm going to throw out there is going to show that there was a ton of speculation that these pings were incorrect. And it took like weeks and weeks and weeks, if not months, for them to release that data, potentially because they were coming up with a cover story, in my opinion. So if you guys want to know more about it, I put a flight path explainer videos that you guys can check out. That I do a very quick 2-minute one on there, but we lost trust in the whisper data and that Inmarsat pings after 1840 UTC. The whisper data report from Richard Godfrey never made any sense. It's like a movie plot in terms of like flying around the coast of the Indonesia to avoid radar, which isn't how you do it, and doing like weird cutbacks to see if anybody's behind you, and then doing a 25-minute holding pattern because they couldn't find any more pings to string together the flight path. Like, it never really made any sense to begin with, and that's probably why they never found the plane down where he says that it should be. The satellite pings switched to the IOR. There's multiple geostationary satellites that were pinging supposedly these planes and their SATCOMs, but before the plane even took off, it stopped pinging the one that was over Japan, even though the plane flies that direction for 40 minutes and never pings that satellite. Now, this is important because when it's only got one ping, we can't triangulate the position of the plane. So this is more evidence for potential espionage that might have happened. We looked at the flight beforehand, which was MH371, going back the other direction. And even after the plane lands in Kuala Lumpur, it's still pinging both satellites. So all of a sudden, right before the plane takes off, it stops pinging one of the satellites and never pings it ever again. The pilot says, "Good night, MH370 at 17:19 UTC. This is roughly 40 minutes after the plane takes off. And then 64 seconds later, plane just goes dark. Both ADS-B and ACARS supposedly are shut off. The official report says that the ACARS was shut off at 17:07, which actually isn't consistent with the time the plane going dark. I don't know how that gets reconciled actually still. They also have a report that the last radar contact was 17:30 UTC, which is weird. So you've got all these different times coming out there that don't really converge on one another. The radar data was not released for weeks, but it was sent to the Americans within 5 days. And then this is very unusual, and this is something that I posted earlier, is that the people that were actually doing the search were searching out west while the whole world thought this plane disappeared over the South China Sea. And if you're old enough to remember and have tracked the plane at that time, you know that it was very unusual. We had no idea where the plane really disappeared or where it went. Well, supposedly the people that were doing the searching were actually not searching in the same place where all the media was telling us that the plane was disappearing, which is very unusual in my opinion. Then a few days later, the Malaysian military comes out and says, "Oh yeah, just kidding. We knew that the plane turned around and went back west over the country and then went out into the Andaman Sea." And then a few days after that, they come out and say, "Oh yeah, now we're going to go ahead and say it went down to the South Indian Ocean and made a sharp turn from the Nicobar Islands down into the South Indian Ocean." But again, the Inmarsat data was not released, the raw data. They released one graphic, which had basically no information in it whatsoever. And then they waited months to release the raw data. The Malaysian Minister of Defense is in an interview saying that they knew that when the plane went dark that it was a civilian airliner flying back across their country, but that they didn't know it was MH370. And he says they also claimed that they knew it wasn't hostile, which is impossible unless you have communication with the plane. Otherwise, there'd be no possible way you could rule out a hijacking scenario. So I don't think that this was incompetence. I think that this was a situation where it was malicious. Like, they knew that this plane was a malicious cover-up, let's say. They would have sent up jets to at least track the plane if they were afraid this plane was going to go fly into the Petronas Towers or some other type of 9/11 style hijacking, and yet they did not do that. And it gets covered up as incompetence, which makes no sense whatsoever. The plane heads directly to Penang, the closest airport that can accommodate a 777 in an emergency. So early on, one of the strongest arguments was that this might be some type of maintenance event. And what we're going to present here is a fire event in a few minutes. There's even a Wired article that argues that that would have been the correct decision to do in an electrical fire. I also recently looked and found that there's a mountain range that extends to about 7,000 feet over there as well. Now, if it's nighttime and you have a depressurized plane and you're trying to keep everybody alive, you have to fly under 10,000 feet. But you also need to fly above 7,000 feet so you don't crash into the mountains. So you've got kind of a small margin of error there, and it's pitch black, right? So this is why they're going to go to Penang as opposed to going back to Kuala Lumpur, where the elevation change would be more dangerous. But again, it's going to be up to the pilot. It's going to be kind of a game time decision, judgment decision for them. So I urge you to read that Wired article if you want to know where the initial thought for the fire came up. And I remember when I first read that article years back, I thought, wow, this felt right. You know, and now we know it wasn't quite an electrical fire. We believe now it's a lithium-ion battery fire, much more dangerous. When the plane gets to Penang, the co-pilot's cell phone pings. This means that the plane had to be under around 7,000 feet, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to ping a cell tower with your cell phone on the plane. The last Malaysian military radar is at 1815 UTC, about 230 miles west by northwest of Penang. Now, this is important, again, because there's no way that the hoaxer could have known to put the coordinates over 300 miles away from that. Right? If this is a hoaxer and they're using the publicly available data between March and May, they would have put it at the last radar location. They wouldn't have put it at the location where the plane supposedly turns in the South Indian Ocean 25 minutes later than this, several hundred miles away from there. Early reports the next day, it said that the loss of contact by Subang Air Traffic Control was at 1840 UTC. Now, this is important because 1840 UTC is the time and location where the plane is actually turning into the South Indian Ocean, that exact time we think the videos are happening. But this got changed later on quietly to 1815 UTC. And when people are lying and come with a cover story, what the information you want to look at is the information that's coming out that very next day. And then again, the anomalous ping data. So after 1840 UTC, between 1941 and 2313 UTC, there's 10 rows of data. Before that, on the raw data, there's hundreds and hundreds of rows of data. You have to scroll through it for like a minute and a half. And then you get to this part where the plane supposedly is flying in the South Indian Ocean. There's 10 total rows of data. There's a pattern in the data. The data changes entirely from the data before that. Anybody that's looking at that's ever worked on databases or spreadsheets or anything is going to look at it and go, wait, there's some difference that happened right at this location, right? Now, why did the plane not crash in the South Indian Ocean? This is probably the most important aspect. We don't even need the videos for this aspect. No debris field found. This is the most important aspect. Even the people that were officially searching out there. Recently, I think it was Paul Waring. He was one like the lead search investigator. He questioned whether or not they were beginning to question whether or not that information could be wrecked, that they were searching in the right location, because they're not finding a huge debris field. They should have found something, anything, if that was the right location. They found nothing in the location where the Inmarsat pings indicated the plane would have crashed. The experts say, and this is Mike Exner, directly from one of the main independent group experts, that the plane must have been crashing at 15,000 feet per minute. And they even admits that it must have burst into 1,000 or thousands of pieces. His argument is that it all just sank, which makes no sense at all, because supposedly he's also saying that the debris washed up thousands of miles away in Africa. It can't be both. Either there's a giant debris field and some of it's washing up in Africa, or all the debris sank. The reality is the debris would not have sank. It would have been a giant debris field visible from space from our satellites. We would have found it the very next day. The most expensive search in history, most extensive search in history, did not find one piece of the plane above or below water after 3 years of searching. They didn't find any black boxes, despite the fact that the black boxes are rated for depths of up 20,000 feet. It is not too deep for those black boxes. They should have found the black boxes. They will never find the black boxes because they would prove the conspiracy. If they do end up finding some black boxes and they claim there's no data on them or some bullshit like that, you guys know that they're lying 100%. Those black boxes use SSDs, solid state drives. They would not get destroyed, certainly not in a water landing. None of the four redundant ELT, there's 4 redundant ELT beacons, emergency transponders, that only go off on a crash. None of them went off. The SOSA system, this was one of the biggest giveaways of the Titan sub. This is one of those things as well that we had to know later on, that the Titan sub came out and imploded, and then 5 days later, everybody's looking at these oxygen counters on TV, and the Navy comes out and says, yeah, we heard about that 5 days ago, but we just decided not to say anything about it. And you know what, by the way, we're going to go send a thing down there tomorrow, a sub, and we're going to go pick up all the pieces, right? This gave away the game that they have hydrophone data, this SOSA system, that is basically able to pinpoint any type of sound that is happening anywhere in the ocean, right? Any anomalous sound, like a tiny sub imploding, for example. So a 777 crashing into the ocean absolutely would have been heard. There's even 2 other hydrophone systems, one in Diego Garcia and one right off the coast of Western Australia. If this plane crashed along the 7th arc, all these systems would have picked up the acoustic sounds. They would have pinpointed the plane. Then the radar systems. I mean, this just gets wild. You have Thailand, India, when the Nicobar Islands, the Indonesia, as well as the Jindali Operational Radar Network, JORN, in Australia. JORN system is super advanced. All of these radars should have picked up the plane either going into the Andaman Sea or going to the South Indian Ocean. None of them do. Then the military bases. We found a Coco Island Signals Intelligence base that's right basically on the route where this plane would have been flying south, as well as Diego Garcia, which is one of the most advanced military bases on the planet, and Pine Gap. If you check out my post today about Pine Gap, this Pine Gap base is like the most advanced satellite network on the planet, right? And so all of these things should have potentially been tracking the plane from takeoff, certainly after it goes dark and goes rogue. So again, this would implicate the United States government in a minimum knowing more about what happened to the plane. It supposedly crashed on an active shipping route from Africa to Australia, but there were no witnesses. It supposedly crashed in the morning hours, but again, nobody sees it. People would say that the ocean's really big, which they're right, but the flight path has the plane running out of fuel. There's actually nowhere else for this plane to go if those Inmarsat pings are correct, which would indicate that they must not be. The official searched everywhere along that final ping and arc, in the Malacca Straits, in the Andaman Sea, and down there in the South Indian Ocean, and found nothing. Now, 19 families of the victims signed a joint statement saying they could call the phones of the victims for up to 4 days, which is not possible if your phones are off or disabled or underwater even. So this is very strong evidence that wherever this plane was, it was somewhere not at the bottom of the ocean. One even proved it on television as well, which we've posted on Twitter in the past. Some social media sites even had the passengers being logged in, which isn't strong evidence, but it's still compelling given the 19 phones that were still ringing. Now, debunking the debris. So some debris was found. Debris was found in Africa, but keep in mind, none was found by the official search. The people that found this debris were just random civilians. One of them is named Blaine Gibson. He went around and did his own kind of investigation and found, I think, about 10 pieces of supposed debris. Only 3 pieces of debris have been confirmed tied to the plane. And only one of those pieces was tied with a serial number. The one that was tied with a serial number did not use a unique serial number. The unique serial plate was just anonymously missing, even though it's bolted onto the plane. So instead, they used a part number. There was 9M MRI. I've got the wrong thing on my evidence list here. That was purchased by GA Telesis and scrapped in October of 2013. It's a perfect replica, also purchased from Malaysian Airlines. So there is some plausibility that this debris could have been from another plane. Although, given the scenario that we've put forth with the fire event that we're going to get to in here in a second, and this superluminal speed event, this warp drive event, this debris could have come off the plane at a different location. Let's say this plane gets teleported somewhere over near the Maldives, and then the debris falls off over there, or that this plane somehow gets to Diego Garcia, they rip the plane apart, throw some of the debris in the water or falls in the water. This would explain why the debris washed up in Africa better than if it crashed somewhere near Australia. Now, in addition to that, the debris modeling, they did some drift modeling. There's huge problems with it. The first time they tried it, the debris wasn't going to wash up in Africa. So then they get a flapper on from the Americans, and they throw it in the water and they go, okay, it'll be there. But then they don't point out the fact that if the debris was kind of had its like wings sticking out of the water, which it would need to float out there fast enough, that why are there barnacles on it? Because it can only be barnacles if it's submerged. Florence Ochangi points out that in order for this flapper to get there, it would have had to float for 5 miles a day, or is it 10 miles? I have to double check, for 500 straight days. This is nonsensical. The oceans don't really work like a huge thing where it's just whipping these pieces across the ocean. So in addition to that, too, the other pieces, even if you assume the debris drift modeling is correct, the pieces of like the engine cowling with the Rolls-Royce logo on them, those would never have gotten there. They did some models, and actually the models showed that some of the debris should have washed up in Africa or in Australia, and yet no debris has ever been found in Australia. So this actually the debris analysis, having dug into it, almost proves that this plane didn't crash in the South Indian Ocean, that it must have either crashed somewhere further to the west, or potentially had the type of indication of the event that we've been putting forth, like that it somehow got towards Diego Garcia in the Maldives. So why is this MH370? That's the only missing 777 that's out there. The thermal is a perfect match, silhouette of the plane. The color tone on the satellite video, light on the top, darker on the bottom, also matches Malaysian Airlines, which is white and then gray on the bottom. The satellite coordinates, putting it in the Nicobar Islands, I mean, this is the exact path of the plane that's out there. The purpose of those systems is to track the airplanes like this. The government had to, U.S. government at least, if not others, had to be tracking a rogue 777 in a post-9/11 world. The Malaysian Minister of Defense admits that the U.S. spy satellites were in the regions and they were in touch with them. We proved that satellite was in the region. We even found a quote from the military on a website that says that they confirmed Sibers provided data to the intelligence community to help solve the mystery of MH370. That, I mean, how much more damning does it get than just a straight up admission, guys? Also, regicide anon. If you look at the hidden metadata on the uploaded video, you can see that there's a hidden tag of MH370 in the satellite video. And then when regicide anon, 3 days later, on May 22nd, 2000, I'm going to add this real quick. May 22nd, 2014, 3 days after they uploaded the video, they made a Twitter post, made a Twitter account. They tagged MH370, said, watch this video before it gets deleted. Pretty interesting thing to post, especially if you are making a hoax video. Seems pretty odd, but I'll leave it up to you guys again. Now, debunking the suicide myth real quick. This is the narrative I think that has the most weight out there. That everybody thinks that this was some kind of suicidal pilot. I would say with 100% certainty, I know this is not a suicidal pilot. Everybody stuck up for him, the wife, the officials, his coworkers. He had 18,000 flight hours. He had no indication of any type of suicidal intent in the flight path. There's no reason to avoid radar if you are on a suicidal route. There's no reason to go say goodbye to your hometown, especially not in the middle of the night at 2 in the morning. If jets had been scrambled, you're just going to crash that plane. The Germanwings suicidal pilot, which was in 2015, the year later, where he did lock out the co-pilot, he crashed the plane within 10 minutes of locking out the co-pilot. He didn't go on an 8-hour joyride. That's not something somebody does on a suicidal scenario. The crew oxygen as well, it probably wouldn't last long enough. I think that we try to look at the estimates. It looks like at most it could last for 2 hours. So in order for this to even make sense, you'd have to depressurize the plane, kill everybody, make sure that none of the other crew were able to access the crew oxygen, and then repressurize the plane later on. And this just way too stressful, way too much of a complicated series of events that has no evidence to support it. Captain Bellany, I'm probably butchering his name. He's another one of the investigators, prominent researchers, says that whoever was in command of the aircraft would have intentionally disconnected all 4 electrical generators and APUs. That's not something one person can do. Practically impossible to do that, especially within the 64 seconds between the time when the last communication and then the plane went dark. Zahari, the captain, was actually rostered to fly MH150 to Jeddah on February 4th, 2014. And the route that they found in his simulator is actually MH150 to Jeddah. It's not some pre-planned route. He did not practice this suicidal route. That is just a narrative and a lie that's been out there for a while. There are a couple points that they tried to loop together to try to say that, oh, he was practicing his route to Jeddah and then just went to the South Indian Ocean or Antarctica or something like that. If you're making that argument, you could just as easily argue that he flew the plane to Diego Garcia because one of those diversion points they found was actually Diego Garcia. Let's see. The narrative of the plane running out of fuel, again, is contrary to the suicide narrative as well. It's, again, not what you do in a suicide scenario. And then we have this direct quote from one of the officials that says, "We've examined the plane and the first officer, and we are quite satisfied with their background, their training, with their mental health. We are not of the opinion that it could have been an event committed by the pilot." So one of the most ironic things I find is that people will call us conspiracy theorists when we push out this evidence, but then they go, oh, well, it was obviously a suicidal pilot, and that all the countries in Malaysia is covering it up for like saving face or something like that, which that requires an even more absurd conspiracy theory. Like, you really think that the governments of Malaysia are going to cover up a suicidal pilot and make themselves look terrible? No, they're just going to admit that was the case. They wish that was the case because that would be an easier explanation than certainly than teleporting a plane or any of the other stuff that we've got going on. Now, there were Cope Tiger and Cobra Gold exercises, as I mentioned. The Cope Tiger exercises were slated to begin March 10th. It seems like the Cobra Gold exercises probably just rolled into the Cope Tiger exercises between Thailand, Singapore, and the United States. The theme of the Cope Tiger exercises that year was search and rescue. It's pretty damn weird. The most advanced assets would have been in the area. If this was a suicidal pilot scenario, they're not going to fly directly towards the most advanced military assets in these exercises that are going on. As Matthias Chang said, that's like flying into the eye of the storm. So that the route there only really makes sense in an emergency scenario. And then the lithium-ion battery fire scenario. So we've got 221 kilograms, 487 pounds of lithium-ion batteries that were put together that same day on March 7th before the plane took off. The batteries skipped 2 security screenings. They were only physically inspected one time. 2 of those pallets that were looking at the ATSB report were clearly unsafely packaged, stacked on top of each other, were placed in the forward cargo bay right next to the electronics bay. So that would indicate that if these batteries exploded, they could have damaged the electronics bay. That could be part of the reason why the plane went dark, consistent with that Wired article I mentioned earlier. The fire event is corroborated by 19 witnesses, including Mike McKay and Catherine T. The cargo compartment was actually designed to withstand flames of 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit or over 900 degrees Celsius for at least 5 minutes. If the fire is constantly being put back out again, this is how we can have a plane that can last for an hour and 20 minutes. The fire cannot be permanently extinguished by the cargo compartment's halon fire suppression device. Those devices actually absorb the oxygen from the surrounding area. This would be why the pilot would intentionally decompressurize the plane, but they would be flying low so that the passengers have enough oxygen to be able to breathe. Those fire suppression devices can last for up to 180 minutes. We've actually found that there's some sources that claim they can last for up to 4 hours instead of 3 hours. So plenty of time for our event to happen. Had a source willing to testify that, who has had experience testifying about the dangers of lithium-ion batteries on the Hill. The witness sighting from Catherine T of the orange glowing plane is consistent with a chemical reaction from the halon fire extinguishing devices releasing bromine, which is a halogen gas. It would make the plane look like a halogen lamp, orange glowing lamp. There's a heat signature near those exhaust panels we talked about before. The AC units might be flushing the smoke. We can see smoke trails in both videos coming from the plane. Some people argue they're coming from the engines, but when you look at the thermal, especially when you look at the zoom-in thermal, it looks pretty clearly like what's happening is the smoke is coming from below and then wrapping around the fuselage of the plane, and that's what it makes it look like they're coming from the engines. There was even a B777 fire suppression device that washes up in the Maldives a couple weeks later, I believe. That's clearly a B777 fire suppression device. It was reported as being a bomb, but it's not. There's also a Mayday call, 2:43 a.m., which if you convert it to UTC from Malaysian time is 18:43 UTC within 3 minutes of our suspected videos, intercepted and reported only in the Chinese news as from MH370 and the plane attempting an emergency landing and disintegrating, which is consistent with the videos, consistent with Catherine T's sighting, consistent with the fire event. FAA changed the rules to no longer allow lithium-ion batteries in the cargo of passenger planes. There's been some argument over the exact year, but it was in the subsequent years after this, 2015 or later. There's more than one lithium-ion battery fire on passenger planes per week in the United States, even after they've been outlawed in the cargo bay of passenger planes. Covering up the fire event would only make sense if these videos are real. Otherwise, why are you covering this up? Just let the plane crash or whatever's going to happen, right? But if those videos are real and that technology is real, that explains why you would have to go to this elaborate cover-up to create these Inmarsat pings and get the world to believe it. Now, Catherine T, the main witness, I have 2 of her blog posts here. She has other blog posts as well, but I thought these were the most compelling to kind of show the timeline and how her story has not changed. They reconstruct her sighting based on automatic GPS. She told me personally, I talked to her, that she thought her sighting was at 1840 UTC. She said she felt pressured by the experts to change the time of her sighting. She saw the plane descending from the beginning to the end. She said the plane was flying low, was recreated to be between 2,000 and 10,000 feet. She saw it descending. She said the plane was glowing orange and had no navigation lights. She said she saw 2 other planes with navigation lights at cruising altitude, that the sighting lasted between 5 and 10 minutes, had this orange glow. She saw black smoke resembling a contrail coming out of it. She actually said to me that she thought it looked like maybe the engines were malfunctioning or something. That looked something like that. She couldn't see any fire or flames, but did see the plane glowing orange. The silhouette, after I talked to her, said it does match what she saw when I showed her the silhouette of the thermal. Funnily enough, she said, well, it wasn't green, it was orange. which indicated that she had no idea about the videos or that we were looking at thermal at all. She didn't see any other boats in the area. She didn't have her radio on to listen to maydays. She went inside and put the kettle on and came back out, and the plane was gone. The recreation of the plane has it circling counterclockwise around her boat, which is the same direction of travel that we see where the plane would have come from and what we see the plane circling in the MH370 videos. Now, this doesn't mean it's the exact time when the videos happen, but it does have a lot of data points that line up. Now, the other witnesses, because that was one of the 19, Mike McKay sees the plane on fire at roughly the exact same time where the plane goes dark, at the same direction as well. People say that he can't see that far, which is speculative. I mean, it's very unusual for him to have created a sighting the very next day from emailing to his coworkers of the exact location and exact time where the plane goes dark. He sees the plane on fire for 5 to 10 seconds and then it stops. This would be consistent with the batteries igniting and then the automatic halon fire extinguishing devices going off and putting the fire out right away. He sees it low on the horizon, possibly at the max distance of a plane at cruising altitude between 35,000 and 40,000 feet. When I use ChatGPT, I get different answers, but one of the answers I got was that the human eye can roughly see about 310 miles in clear conditions at an altitude of 35,000 feet, which would have been pretty similar to Mike McKay's distance from the plane. People along the coast of the South China Sea actually heard, there was 9 of them that hear loud noises, roughly at 1720 UTC. They say that it sounded like an engine. Fishermen 10 miles off the coast, 10 minutes later, see the plane flying unusually low at 1730 UTC. This is going to be consistent with a fire event, depressurizing the plane and beginning to fly low. There was even a communication received by an unnamed 777 pilot at 1730 UTC, claiming to hear the pilot or the co-pilot. They did not want to be named because they didn't want to lose their job and be attacked like many of the other witnesses were. Matthias Chang, he was a lawyer and advisor to the Prime Minister, or actually that's the Minister of Defense, but the former Prime Minister, Mahathir. The Malaysian government had been given conditional sealed evidence that on condition of receiving the evidence that they would not be able to say anything about it, which is pretty damn unusual. He also told alternative media it would have been a global impact to the world's economy. Really unusual thing to tell alternative media. Matthias Chang apparently knew about what really happened to this plane and was being kind of coy and trying to get the information out, but just kind of like our investigation, the mainstream media wouldn't pick up on it. Another interesting aspect of him is he was arrested while representing a whistleblower in the 1MDB scandal, which is the largest kleptocracy scandal in the history of the world, based out of Malaysia, from the guy who was the prime minister at the time when MH370 went missing. So, the leaker, Agent 370, my hero, Lieutenant Commander Edward C. Lin. I put in FOIAs for the FBI. The FOIA to the FBI came back and said that it would be rejected for privacy purposes. The FOIA to the NCIS said it was rejected in total to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. We realized early on the leaker was going to be a U.S. military personnel, likely an operator, likely had an emotional reaction, removed the HUD data, meaning they were probably a patriot, cropped out the drone as well, maybe had to convince Regicide Anon the videos were authentic, and maybe that's why Regicide Anon did not upload them right away. May have thought that they were looking at UFOs, only to be later told that this was U.S. technology. Edward C. Lin was assigned to the Special Projects Squadron 2, the VPU-2 Wizards. He flew in either the Lockheed EP-3 Ares 2 or the Poseidon P-8, potentially both. The Lockheed Martin EP-3 Ares 2 had real-time signals intelligence and full-motion video intelligence. That plane crew fuses the collective intelligence along with offboard data to create battlefield situational awareness. His role on that plane was exactly what you would expect. He relayed the information to the upper command, so he would have had access to potentially both videos. The code name on his investigation against him was called Rogue Archer. He had experience in signals intelligence, which we had been talking about for months before we came across him. His last deployment began February 2014. It was slated to end March 2016. The reassignment date that we found shows March 25th, 2014. But we know for sure, we have a quote from his lawyer saying the investigation into him began April 2nd, 2014. This gives us a narrow time of just the 2 months before and after the plane went missing, even less, like 1 month. which highly indicates that whatever happened to him was related to Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. In May of 2014, he accidentally left 2 flight manifests in his flight suit from a deployment that included search and rescue code names. I don't know what else that could possibly be other than MH370. The time frame is just too short. The defense argued, his defense argued that the classified information in question was available on the internet. To date, nobody has pointed out what other classified information that could be. Seems like it would have to be these videos for them to come at him for espionage charges. Arrested in 2015, they did an FBI sting operation on him in August of 2015 for 1 month before they arrested him. This would seem to indicate that they didn't have any hard evidence on him, and so instead they ran a sting operation to try to build more evidence for the espionage case, which ended up falling through. The charges would have resulted in life in prison. It was the first major incident of espionage by an active duty member of the U.S. Navy since the end of the Cold War. His charge sheet was heavily redacted. If you guys look at other espionage cases, they pretty much just tell you what the people did. But for some reason, everything was obfuscated around Lieutenant Commander Edward C. Lin. He had classified secret information. That part, never mind. He was privy to the Navy's black program portfolio and had top secret and compartmentalized access. Knowledge could be extremely useful to potential U.S. adversaries. It wasn't really a spy case. The military ended up having to admit that there was no evidence that Lin exchanged any information with anyone from China. And then he was abused while in pretrial detainment by someone called the Goon Squad. This is heavily documented as well. The agents didn't properly advise him of the crimes that he was suspected of or his right to an attorney while they were interrogating him, which would seem to indicate that they knew that their charges were overcharging and they were trying to get more information out of him, make him give up information willingly. Each of the emails listed as compelling evidence to deny his release from pretrial detainment were fairly mundane. So this is, again, a situation where they couldn't even tell the judge what the evidence was all about because they were trying to keep it so under wraps. The judge still said that he's shown a dangerous pattern of disclosed information, but didn't point to any disclosures of classified information when they made that judgment. The charges were obfuscated by the military. They added a prostitution charge on there, which makes no sense when you're charging someone with espionage and trying to get them in life in prison. Took a plea deal with a 9-year sentence with 3 years suspended. We looked at the appeals, and the appeals penal code are consistent with potentially video evidence as well. And hopefully, can you guys do a emoji? Just let me know you guys can still hear me in the space. I just got a weird alert, so I just want to make sure you guys can still hear me. If someone can emoji in the space. Oh, crap. Okay. I'm going to try to rejoin. Guys, if anyone's in the space right now as well, can you just... Oh, you guys can still hear? Okay. Well, here we go again. Thanks. I'm going to rejoin real quick. Sorry, guys. This thing is awful. Okay, can you guys just emoji so I can see if you guys can hear? Okay, I can see you guys again. Sorry about that delay. Here we go again. Okay. So he accepted his plea deal. The charges were shown to be related to potential video evidence. He says he believes he was over sentenced, and they had to have people go ahead and testify against him that the sentencing would have been appropriate. Which 9 years, if you guys check for similar charges, was way too much. So this is a very harsh sentence, which again would be indicative of some major leak getting out there. Now, next thing, Chinese hack. This is something that only I've reported on, but the creepy video that came out also mentioned this. Satellite images, supposedly of the South China Sea of this Chinese hack. You go look at these pictures, and it looks like 3 orbs around an object, and there's 3 pictures of them as well. And they looked in the South China Sea. There was nothing in the South China Sea. I reported this potentially could be some type of spycraft at play. And if this is an espionage event that the United States government took this plane, then this could be a situation where China's saying, you got us, we know what you did, but we can't really prove it, right? China even hacked Malaysia March 9th, the very next day, stealing crisis meeting minute notes and classified information about MH370. So the only reason why they would do that is that China could, in my opinion, could not be implicated in the disappearance, because you're not going through all that effort to find information if you're the one who took the plane, right? They were trying to figure out what happened to that plane. They probably had their own satellites, and they're trying to figure out, why don't we see a debris field anywhere? So I FOIA'd like everybody, and I still haven't gotten most of them back. I filed the AARO case. I'm still waiting back for a historical reference number on that. It's been weeks and weeks and weeks with respect to that. I spoke to somebody for about an hour and a half. So we'll see what happens with this AARO report that comes out like tomorrow. I don't suspect any good stuff. I already mentioned the NCIS case. We found another NSA FOIA by O'Reilly Tates back from 2014 that was also to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. It was also rejected. I've also FOIA'd a bunch of other people, once again, NRO, NGA. I FOIA'd the Navy, the Air Force. The Navy and the Air Force audio radios said that they came back with nothing. Then I FOIA'd the Navy again, and they asked for clarification. That was a few days ago. So I'll get you guys the response on those FOIAs later on. Other relevant, pertinent information is that there were 2 fake passengers using stolen passports that changed their appearance. So if this is an espionage event, those could be operatives that were on board the plane. I've already mentioned the satellite coordinates could only be the South Indian Ocean or the Nicobar Islands. We wanted them to be the South Indian Ocean, but didn't work out. March 13th was when unnamed U.S. officials started leaking information to the media stating that the plane flew into the South Indian Ocean. So it was U.S. officials happened to be the ones that were setting the narrative. Sybers builds a 3D battlefield, which can ignore those satellite movements that I was talking about. I already mentioned some of this other stuff here as well. The White House was calling Malaysia every day. This would only be something that you would do if you're trying to set a narrative. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the White House directly calling them. Obama visited in April, but they never mentioned MH370. That was the first time that he visited in over 50 years. I had a source that mentioned that they were friends with the general's nephew, General Joseph F. Dunford, and that the nephew had shown the general the videos, and that they reacted in a way that confirmed their authenticity. They didn't laugh at them. They didn't dismiss them. To me, that's pretty wild, because that guy ended up becoming the highest ranked military officer right after this, and then went on to be board of directors at Lockheed Martin. Rolls-Royce's silence. You can check out the piece that I just did regarding that. They had to retract a Wall Street Journal article regarding Rolls-Royce and Boeing, where Rolls-Royce and Boeing was saying that the plane had flown for 5 more hours. And that when we look at the satellite data, the ping satellites, one of them happens 8 minutes. The very last ping happens 8 minutes before the second to last ping, which supposedly is consistent with the plane coming into a gate. So if this was some type of espionage event, they kind of screwed up, because they forgot to like turn that system off before they landed the plane somewhere. Let's see. I think I got the rest of those. Okay, so motive, guys. We're getting near the end here. The Freescale semiconductor scientists, 20 of them, way too many people on board one plane. This would break company policies. They were also sitting next to each other, which means that they probably booked the tickets together, which should have definitely flagged the company. The plane was likely doomed due to not landing in Penang for unknown reasons. Landing in the ocean would have broken it apart. We found a 2005 NSA security report on commercial room temperature superconductive microchip development that references Freescale 9 different times. Freescale Semiconductors also launched a major initiative serving RF power needs for U.S. aerospace and defense sector. So Freescale Semiconductors was linked to advanced microchips as well as to the military directly. So the scenarios here is a VIP passenger could have played their get out of jail free card. This could have been a situation where they were trying to prevent the loss of the intellectual property related to the technology that was deployed. If those were our people, maybe they're rescuing them. There's a narrative where you could say that they were testing this on a doomed plane, though it seems too complicated. You would just test it on an empty plane. And then the espionage scenario, possibly preventing this intellectual property from going to China. 8 of those 20 Freescale Semiconductor employees were nationals of China. So this could explain why they potentially could have been defecting. And this was a big operation then to prevent that from happening, because whoever controls this technology controls the world. So now this is going to get into a little bit of the science stuff on the orb analysis. The first orb is approaching the plane at nearly Mach 3 speeds, 2,000 miles an hour, using superconductivity in order to obtain quantum properties to ignore gravity. So creating like a bubble around the object, or it could just be a plasma ball entirely. They're generating their own geodesics, those dark lines in front of them, possibly via accelerated vibration through a pulse current. Now, this is going to be consistent with Salvatore Pais' high-frequency gravitational wave generator patent that's out there that was approved. The cold lines are in front of the orbs, not behind. There's no visible propulsion. There's no reference for this either. Nobody's ever seen anything like this before. The cold lines could be changing the pressure of the atmosphere. They could actually just be expanding space itself, is why it might be completely black in the thermal. The heat signatures in the orbs are spinning on their axis. We see the orb triangle pattern consistent with that three-phase electrical system as well. I'm going to remove this part at 120 degrees. Sinusoidal waves. Tipler cylinders are predicted to be able to produce sinusoidal distortions in space-time, emitting gravitational waves in a repeating wave pattern. This is just some circumstantial evidence. The orbs encircle the plane over time. The orb pattern changes into a vertical ring before the phase transition that happens. The phase transition bends those orbs as they move towards the plane, and we can see potential gravitational lensing when those orbs flatten out. Now, in addition to that as well, we've also recently shown that the orbs slow down a little bit in the satellite video right before the singularity occurs. And at the same time, in the thermal video, you can actually see them reorienting, where you can see the heat signature all of a sudden kind of disappear and then come back, where the orbs are getting into their exact orientation they need to get into in order to begin the phase transition. That seems like a very, very elaborate detail to add to a hoax video. The plane disappears from space-time instantly. I mean, a fraction of a second, blink of an eye, and it's gone. The zap is cold. This is an endothermic event. This is not an explosion that's happening in the videos. It's a transitional phase state change, according to physicists. It's not necessarily a black hole because nothing is really getting sucked in. And it's not cloaking because the smoke trail stops when the plane disappears. Since E equals mc squared, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, this would, in theory, rule out annihilation, because otherwise the mass and energy would have to go somewhere. This would be a giant explosion. Though recently we've now come to realize that there may, if we can teleport an object, there may be antimatter. And if there is some antimatter that can be produced, then you may be able to annihilate an object. But I think it's a very low probability. So teleportation, if you're using a superluminal speed, this plane could go to another dimension, it could go to another planet, it could go to the future, or I think the most plausible explanation is just go somewhere else on Earth. We can't break causality, as at least we don't think we can. Maybe the Mandela effect will end up being real. So unless you change dimensions or you change timelines, right? So if we're dealing with some kind of string theory situation scenario in our reality here, that could be possible. But otherwise, this plane is probably just going slightly to the future. But I don't think it's going like 10 years to the future. We're talking like maybe a few seconds, minutes, hours at the most. Teleportation could be to hide the plane. It could just be as a show of force. And it may also be to put out the fire, since we have this endothermic event. The big danger of these batteries is called thermal runaway on them. It's because these batteries have so much energy in them. So if we see this endothermic event, which is an absorption of energy, it could be that this event is sucking the energy out of those batteries. And maybe that's just an added benefit of what's going on in these videos. Another reason why we think the plane is potentially on Earth is those phones that were ringing, right? Just the same reason why the plane's not at the bottom of the ocean. If those phones are ringing for 4 days, it's probably not somewhere in another dimension or another timeline either, right? Now, some additional science. I already mentioned the double slit experiment, the greatest mystery in physics that proves quantum teleportation is possible. It's what allowed us to realize that non-locality is real, which is the idea that the universe is reacting faster than the speed of light, faster than we can even see it and perceive it. Time dilation is real, which means that more mass equals slower time. This is best shown by the movie Interstellar. If you go near a black hole, your time is going to slow down. That means when you're looking out towards less mass, everything's going to look like it's going super speed. And when they look at you when you're next to the black hole, it's going to look like you're moving in slow motion. So that means that time is a fluid symmetry out there. And the time, space-time itself can be bent, can be warped. That means our perspective of time now doesn't really mean anything. Wormholes have been shown to be theoretically possible by at least 3 scientific papers in recent years. They all show that you don't need exotic material. One argues that a thin shell could be used to safely transport an object, and they all argue that wormholes could be humanly traversable, which is the idea that you're not going to get ripped to shreds when you go through the wormhole. Room temperature superconductivity can be induced via metamaterials, LK99, or just yesterday there was like 4 other different composites that were creating potential room temperature superconductive materials, or also, according to Salvatore Pais, by repeated pulse vibrations from transducers, which goes back to the interviews that I had with him, is that we might not even need metamaterials in order to induce room temperature superconductivity, which is pretty crazy. The orbs appear to be mapping that plane. That computer program can exist the pattern or explain the pattern. We don't need these things to be manually controlled. What we're seeing here is a field. We're not seeing a metal ball on these orbs. We're seeing the non-radiating barrier, like the distortion between our space-time and whatever's going on, or we're seeing some kind of ball lightning there. The combined toroidal moment can cohere electrons. Now, this is where the superconductivity comes into play. So what we're talking about here is that these orbs are kind of doing something magically here to the plane, if you want to think of it, and that's creating a superconductive state, which is then allowing the phase transition of the plane to happen. So it's not necessarily that the superconductivity is just directly allowing the phase transition to happen. Is whatever electronic circuit, for example, like a coherent matter wave beam that Lockheed Martin has a patent for, that can create a state that allows for superconductivity, which then allows for macroscopic quantum coherence. The idea where this object can now completely phase out. The orbs become a part of the relationship with the plane as the electrons around the nucleus extend unshielded. So this is the idea that the electrons that are in all of the atoms around the plane can now just kind of cohere into a single matter wave beam. And this is, again, how, or a matter wave, not necessarily a beam. This is how this plane can achieve that macroscopic quantum coherence that's required to now act like a subatomic particle to obtain quantum properties. When the orbs converge, they create their own azimuth. Again, their sphere around the plane. The orbs converging actually triggers the transitional phase state change. This is where the energy levels amplify as they are compacting onto the plane. This is what's allowing for that singularity to occur. Low temperatures can allow those electrons to couple and cohere, but as we pointed out, with high temperature superconductivity, we potentially don't even need that. The fractal toroidal moments are what causes that singularity. I'm just thinking if there's any others I need here. Yeah, and so also the faster relative flow of time, since time is a fluid symmetry, less inertia, therefore zero gravity. When you achieve zero gravity, zero inertia, now you have a point where you can just push an object and it can accelerate towards the speed of light. It could also just be a matter of creating a bubble around the plane and warping the space-time around the plane, like bending a piece of paper and then punching a hole through it as well. I think we got the rest of those. Okay, so then the dangers of this technology is that this could lead into doomsday weapons. There's a lot of good things it can lead to, but it could also lead to doomsday weapons. This would be the reason why this would be classified, the reason why this would be hidden. It goes well beyond being told about aliens or floating craft. This goes to being weapons that are almost infinitely more powerful than nuclear weapons. So just imagine the classification levels that would be around this type of technology to prevent us from destroying ourselves. A couple other quick science things here as well. We're near the bottom here. High-frequency gravitational waves from Salvatore Pais. They can create high-frequency gravitational waves by accelerated axial rotation and or accelerated high-frequency vibration. Vibration being the one that's the key here. This can be used to propagate radiation through magnetic fields, which can enable macroscopic quantum coherence, the ability for macroscopic objects to obtain quantum mechanical properties. Multiple of these can be used to focus on a singular point to create the curvature of the space-time singularity. You can create a gravity well in the path with this. This can also lead to room temperature superconductivity. You can enable nuclear fusion via this as well. And then again, that energy can be amplified to such a degree that it can create a curvature of space-time, leading to the total destruction of a planet or asteroid. Just think about that, guys, because that's the big key for why you're covering this up, right? A total destruction potentially of our planet, our civilization. And then I'm going to skip actually over the electromagnetic field generator, but this one basically is like how you can allow an object to achieve zero inertia and superluminal speeds. The debunks, I've already kind of mentioned most of the debunks that are out there. With respect to, I'm just going to go over probably the couple of the biggest ones. The Pyromania VFX, it's similar, but it does not match on a single frame. The debunkers would argue that it had to be edited. The problem there, again, is there's no reference, right? So they would have had to have been blindly editing it, which I have challenged the debunkers to find another movie or situation where somebody used that VFX and edited it. And to date, nobody has done that. I also asked for people to come up with a very specific list of requirements of what exactly you would have to edit in sequence to get it to be a 100% pixel perfect match, because they argue that it would be easy to do, but then they should be able to create a reproducible list that anybody could follow to instantly make a perfect match. The reality is they are not the same, and that VFX is not in our videos. Although it is, again, one frame is slightly similar. I already mentioned the fact that 2D assets would not be used in a 3D rendered environment, which we've shown from the requirements would be necessary. People have also put in some other debunks in here as well that were that there's frames that match. There aren't any frames that match. You can do like an overlay of the frames, and you can show the differences, and that should bring back a white image if that was the case, but it does not, which shows that there are no frames that match. There's also been the jittery debunks, jittery trails debunk, which is actually just the camera shaking accurately. And if you use visual effects or like software to what's it called? Stabilize the footage, then you are going to see artifacts when you do that. So you can't stabilize the footage to come up with debunks like that. I've seen several like that, and unfortunately, what we're really just looking at there is accurate camera shake. The cloud debunk, again, I mentioned as well. 6-day-old account. Anonymous sent that from a burner email to the photographer for some reason, for the photographer to put their name on it. I did warn that photographer that putting your name on a debunk like this after just getting an anonymous email is not only suspicious, but would draw a lot of negative attention, which is unfortunately exactly what happened. I don't condone anybody harassing anyone like that. But when you come in and you don't look at the evidence and you try to debunk things, you're putting yourself out there, especially with your real name. And that's probably why the 6-day-old Reddit account didn't want to do it, right? They wanted somebody else to put their name out there, which is pretty scummy in my opinion. We checked those torrents. We didn't find anything of these images. There's no proof that these images go back to predate the videos whatsoever. And somebody even showed within 1 minute that you can create a higher quality image from a lower quality cloud picture using AI. In addition to that, there was some forensic analysis that was done that I don't have listed here. I think the strongest forensic analysis was somebody found a Flickr image of Mount Fuji that is a perfect, pixel perfect match over the supposed cloud picture with the exact angle and the exact shadow on it as well, which is ironic because when the Pyromania VFX came up, we said that they don't match, and they said, well, that's okay because you could just edit it. And then we found the Fuji picture, Mount Fuji, it's an exact match where like you can literally just put it over top as an exact match, even with the shadow. And then the debunker said, "Oh no, you can. That doesn't mean anything," which is extremely ironic in my opinion. And let's see. So the clouds do move. The smoke naturally flows. There's no jittery weirdness or anything in that. The prosaic debunks are countered by the evidence that we're actually looking at a citric session in here. I think I've already addressed the rest of these as well. And also, yes, the MQ-1C does experience turbulence when flying through the wake. Some people argue both sides of it, that there should be more turbulence, less turbulence. If you look at these drones and even just commercial drones, even in quite a lot of turbulence, they don't shake very much. I actually have a video that I'm willing to break out at some point if necessary on that. But there's no inconsistency with the turbulence of the drone flying underneath the wake of the plane. Reverse engineering versus non-human intelligence. A lot of people say, well, I think this has got to be aliens. There's no reason for such an extensive cover-up for just an anomalous event. If this is, in my opinion at least, if this is UFOs, I don't think you're doing this huge cover-up. You just come up with some other explanation. The assets that are filming are all U.S. military assets. So they either got extremely lucky and just randomly caught this event going on if it was a non-human intelligence, or this was an operation. They're filming before the orbs even show up. The orbs are moving at Mach 3 speed, so this plane wasn't trying to outrun the orbs. There's no way it would have ever been able to do so. The pattern is created by a computer program, so we don't need like aliens to explain anything that we're seeing here. And I think that's the strongest evidence for why it's not, right? The fire event actually indicates a rescue motive, or now that we put out an espionage event, right? Where they could have planted this fire, they could have ignited this fire in order to intentionally divert the plane just to then orbit later on to somewhere else. And one of the things, too, is that we can't really attribute human motivations to non-human intelligence. If there is non-human intelligence that's a million more years in advance than us, they're not going to probably think like we do. They're probably going to be a completely different level of consciousness than we're at. So again, the most important part is science can explain everything that we see. And now the final run here. So where did it go? Probably Diego Garcia, if I had to put money on it. The fire suppression device, the islanders that saw the plane early in the morning with the red and white stripe, that were just in the small, like 3,000 people on a tiny island. They don't see jumbo jets. They see a giant jumbo jet that matches MH370 going towards Diego Garcia. You have the Philip Wood EXIF data picture that has EXIF data in it that points to Diego Garcia. You've got the Black Vault FOIAs that show that Diego Garcia is a CIA black site, so they've got prisons there. The no departures 72 hours after March 8th from Diego Garcia that was found on Facebook. The flight logs that were destroyed by water damage for Diego Garcia in July of 2014. It's really damn suspicious. All the conspiracy theories thought that this plane went there, including Mark Dugain, who's a famous author and writer. Catherine T even said, I think in 2018, that she thought that must have been where the plane went. The problem that everybody had is there was no way for the plane to get there, at least not easily. But if we have this superluminal event, then it kind of fills all those gaps. There's tens of millions to black construction for dredging, which would indicate there's potentially some kind of underground facility at this place. Lockheed Martin is tied with a contract to upgrade power and water because we need more connections to Lockheed Martin. There was even weird photos that were posted that show some vaguely similar looking people on the island that look similar to some of the crew members, which I don't think they all really do, but a couple of them do look quite a bit similar. Now, I think that's kind of pretty weak evidence in general, but still important to post everything, all the evidence that we've got that's out there. Sources that I talked to claim that this place is more important than Area 51, which makes sense because this place is nothing around it in the South or in the Indian Ocean. They're not South Indian Ocean. It's a good place to test out technology, good place to hide something. No radars nearby. Supposedly their radar can see 3,000 miles, which would have been able to see the plane start to finish. They also have this thing called the Ground-Based Electro-Optical Deep Space Surveillance System there, which is some super advanced surveillance system that exists. So pretty interesting base. That's where I would bet anything it went. Now, the hardest part, what about the families? What about the passengers? Earlier today, I posted a reply to Sarah Bach. I'm going to probably butcher her last name, where she was the girlfriend of Philip Wood. If you guys have seen her appearances, she knows that this plane did not crash. She says several times she thinks the plane was taken. She was thanking Jeff Wise in that post for still looking into it. So this completely destroys any narratives out there about hurting the families. They want the answers, and they have never gotten them. They've never believed the official story. Settlements most likely forced most of the families into silence. Ketanji Brown Jackson was actually the judge who ruled against the civil suits being tried in the United States in 2018, claiming that Malaysia or China were the better locations for it. This cost the families millions of dollars. Ketanji Brown Jackson was later appointed to the Supreme Court by Joe Biden. Instead, the families got, on average, from my investigation, around $30,000 each. Basically nothing. In addition to a $50,000 initial payout in 2014 that was uncontingent. If alive, which I'm going to go ahead and be optimistic and pray that maybe some of these people survived. They would be in witness protection. They potentially could have been returned to their home countries in exchange for their silence. China would very easily be able to keep them quiet. But it seems like a lot of work. As the Alien Addict guys said, if they did survive, which is tough considering the lithium-ion battery event, the depressurization of the plane, as well as this macroscopic phase conjugation, there would have been other ways to silence them, is what I'll say, even after that. That could have been pretty passive. I'm praying that we're not that evil, honestly, as a country in the United States. And I'm just hoping that somehow these people are still alive somewhere. One of the nephews of the pilots was told that his uncle was collateral damage. To me, this is a strong indication of an espionage event. You don't tell somebody your uncle is collateral damage unless the Americans were involved in it, right? The French father was told that there were 2 AWACS in the area and that the Americans knew exactly what happened. This could indicate that the plane was remote controlled, as Captain Dan Hanley has suggested, as well as Field McConnell. And then the former head of Indonesian police said he was told what really happened to MH370 from his Malaysian counterpart. So this is all the evidence, guys, for what we have going on right now. I think that it's extremely powerful evidence, but again, I leave it to you guys. Tomorrow, I will be retiring from the investigation at the end of the day after I put in a couple more posts and hopefully a little treat that I've got planned for everybody. But I've loved this journey, start to finish. I've loved meeting all you guys and all the other people that I've met out there related to this. It's changed my entire life, all for the better. And I just hope that we can get answers for the families and for everybody else who's out there. So at this point, I think I'm going to make Mellow Demon. You know what? I'll make UFO intros. I don't think you have very many people blocked. I'll make you a co-host if you want it. And if you want to assist here as well, pulling some people up. If you guys want to ask any questions, make any comments, if I forgot anything, we can do Q&A for like 20 or 30 minutes. I don't want it to be a lot of like gushy stuff about, you know, whatever. I love you guys. We already did like the retirement stuff in general, but you can say whatever you want. I'm not too worried about it. Mello, did you have anything? And you guys can go ahead and start requesting if you want. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the summary. I need to switch to my other headset one.
Yeah, if you could help bring people up as well, that would be sweet, because I'm on this weird app. So, and by the way, if anyone's requesting to speak and I'm not getting to you, it's not because I'm avoiding you or anything like that. It's just the app is super buggy and sometimes doesn't show people who are requesting to speak. But yeah, it's open forum. Anyone who wants to request to speak, just go ahead and request and say whatever you want. Okay, looks like we got Billy Bob. And before we get a bunch of people up here, you can feel free to just speak up once you get added as a speaker. If somebody else is speaking, just wait for them. But yeah, go ahead, Billy Bob. Did you have a question or anything about the case or what have you? Or while Billy Bob's waiting, Moneypenny, hey, welcome up, Moneypenny. If you have anything you want to say.
Hey, how are you?
Hey,
Gosh,
good.
every time I hear from you, you bring me more information, more stuff to study. You have ruined my life. My science nerdiness has gone off the Earth's planet. I don't know, the atmosphere. It's just ridiculous. Thank you so much. Wow. I don't even know how you managed to do all that. I know you had some notes, but it shows how much your brain can cram in. One thing you didn't get into is the thing that I could add a little bit about, but it's the broader picture. What was happening in the world at the time? You know, was there anything going on? And I was just looking back at some of my notes, and I came across the Wolf of Wall Street. I wondered if you wanted to mention it.
Yeah, the 1MDB stuff. Yeah, I think that I kind of mentioned it a little bit, which is the Prime Minister. I think it's Najib. He was the one who was in charge at the time MH370 disappeared. He was kind of pushing some of these narratives that we think might be fake, and then right after that, like a year later, turns out he's been stealing $700 million plus, biggest kleptocracy scandal in the history of the world, which is pretty unusual. So, yeah, from a broader perspective, it's like, you know, he just happens to be in this huge scandal related to oil right after that as well. I don't know that we have like direct connections, but it's clearly pretty suspicious in general that was going on. So, do you have anything to add onto that, Moneypenny?
No, just that really there would be a motive there for the US because the Department of Justice, Goldman Sachs, had the largest exposure ever seen within international government. And in fact, the fact is that it's been described as the world's largest financial scandal and is still actually continuing to this day because a lot of the funds and investments that were made from it are still in debt to each other, to different parties, not to mention money laundering.
Awesome. Billy Bob, do you have anything you want to say? If not, Mercutius, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name.
Hey, Ashton, I just want to commend you for your work. I won't gush too much, but I'm very impressed with the physics research and the way that you've pulled together and assembled a whole bunch of what are essentially verifiable yet diverse and cutting edge principles in physics that actually very much lay out the plausibility case to a very high degree. I'm really impressed with it. Well done.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's the most exciting part for me. So like this kind of goes into like what's next for me, right? Like my plan is I want to learn more about science and electrical engineering and what have you that's out there. Craig, I'm just going to mute you for a second here. And that's just because that's what I enjoy the most. And I think that that's the path forward for proving that the stuff's real, is proving that the science can be real. That's the stuff that's blown my mind the most. So, yeah, appreciate that. Any follow-up on
that? Look, agreed. I was lucky enough to grow up in a very sciencey, very engineering orientated family. And my older sister, who's a decade older, worked as a science communicator, and so I started getting to go into that science museum and see all of the exhibits that were demonstrating principles of physics and speak to science communicators and that kind of thing from a very, very young age. And it's just really imbued or fostered that innate childlike curiosity that's in all of us. I was fortunate enough to have that happening in my world, which was a platform that continued to nurture that curiosity. And some anomalous events took place which were outside of the realms of known physics at the time that I was studying it as an undergrad. For instance, I had a dream that about a car accident that then took place in real life 3 months later, and I was studying physics literally as an undergrad at the time, and I had to drop out afterwards because there was nothing in the paradigm of physics that could explain how I could possibly have a dream to anything like that much detail 3 months.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Merc. But I think we're just going to keep the stories short here because I want to get to the questions and go quick. But I appreciate you very much for asking your question and digging into it. And I hope that this can inspire people from the science perspective, for sure. So thank you very much. And I'm going to go to UFO intros because you've had your hand up and you're co-hosting. So thanks, man. Welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to know. You can DM me, but I just however you want me to co-host. I guess like anyone you do or don't want me to bring up, should I look at their followers or whatever?
Oh, you can bring up anybody who wants to, and if we have to cycle people down after they talk, that's cool as well. I'm only going to do probably another 15 minutes of questions, so I want to keep it pretty brief here. So we can, I think we've kind of covered what I want to cover from the investigation side. I just want to answer questions for people if possible, and their short comments. So Craig, I think you're unmuted. Do you have a question? I don't know if you can put your hand up or not.
Hey, bud. I only got this for you. I respectfully ask you your belief on the validity and the origins of the sender of the letter to Ashton, also the UK administrative elite involvement in the event.
Sorry, what was the last part? The second part?
The UK's administrative elites involved.
Oh, yeah.
In this.
Yeah, so the letter thing was the weirdest thing that's ever happened in my whole life.
Thank you.
I didn't make that letter. I have no involvement with the letter. I was kind of playing it out, waiting to see if like they would show more stuff, to see if like they were somebody who was trying to latch on to the investigation. I even played the video on my stream multiple times, start to finish, to see if they would copyright strike me. None of those things ever happened. And then the whole account just went dark, like right afterwards. So it was like they buffered that letter with a couple other videos, the Miami aliens weird videos and the Chan Thomas stuff. And then there's this super detailed letter to me in the middle of it. My opinions at this point are either it's a super stalker of myself and Malcolm Bendall, or it's a situation where it's some kind of intelligence community psyop from either a foreign intelligence community or our own intelligence, or it's potentially real and maybe some elements are true and some elements aren't. It definitely changed my perspective a little bit because I had been talking about the rescue option as being the most likely. But when you think about the espionage option, especially bringing in the Russian GRU intelligence report, it does just seem more like it's a straight up espionage by the United States government start to finish.
I was speaking about the administrative elite that was implicated in the letter.
Yeah, an administrative elite. I think you would go back to the Putin Tucker Carlson interview where...
No, I'm talking about the British United... it's clearly stated, the British administrative elite.
Yeah, I'm not sure, man. It talks about the administrative elite. I've listened to it about 40 times. What I would say in general is that we're talking about like the Five Eyes, right? The UK, United States, Australia. I mean, this is more than one country covering this up, right? It's the U.S. is filming it, probably U.S. technology, but they're in cooperation with, Australia and UK. So end of the day...
It does my heart good to talk to you. I know you got a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
You're fine.
Do the best. Thanks.
No, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, and so I think that's very strong evidence, or at least, I don't know about strong evidence, but it's a very strong motive for why they would do this in general. And I've kind of leaned more towards it, but I'm still a little bit skeptical just because it's such a weird letter. So, good question though on that. Vink, we want to go to you. Thanks for being up here.
Hey, Ashton, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, man. What's going on?
Been a long while, man. I stopped joining your spaces and all, but yeah. So basically, I just wanted to say it's been a long journey. I've heard you since August or something. Okay. Basically, we throughout the journey, you kept you saw what they were trying to do to stop you. Like first there was this Jonas Cloud debunk, and then there was this, the guy who scammed you for like 1 or 2K. I can't remember. Okay, so basically, I just wanted to say that, man, I think you should just continue this investigation. I know that this is just me being selfish, and I might, like a lot of people might agree with me over here. I just think that you should continue this investigation. Like no one else is doing it. You are the voice of the whole MH370 investigation. They've been ignoring you and all, but I think this will be your, like, this is your only way of silencing the haters, and I don't know, continuing what you do pretty good. That is what I think. Other than that, bro, I've loved following you for the past, however many months it has been. It has been a great journey. But yeah, like, are you seriously retiring? Is that the standing consensus? Your final decision?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think that from the MH370 investigation, and I think part of it's too that you look through the evidence that we just went over today, it's really, really long, right? We've dug through everything that's out there. I mean, there's probably some little corners that we could still dig into, but that's where I would pass it down to some of the other investigators, like JK Philly Fan and Arwin, who've been digging into that. If they want to post, I'd be happy to promote some of their content if they're going to do that. But for me, it's a situation where, truth be told, that a lot of people out there, maybe the people in this space and on this stream that are watching right now are ready for this, but the vast majority of people out there are not. Even the people that are into UFOlogy, that want disclosure, a lot of this is a bridge too far for them. And I think that the world has to catch up a little bit before it'll get to a point where people can really wrap their brains around it. And I'm talking people too that are like, UFO celebrity people, right? Like I don't think it's really unusual in my mind, right? That you've got people like Lou Elizondo, Ross Coulthart, Stephen Greer, and, Jeremy Corbell, and like nobody wants anything to do with it, right? And these are people that literally are talking about disclosure and aliens visiting us from other galaxies and stuff like this, right? Jellyfish aliens and stuff like this, where it goes to show that, like, as humanity, we still have quite a bit to go for the science to catch up, where people then can go, okay, well, maybe these videos are real, right? So this is going to be a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I think that stepping away from the case is the best thing, where people can kind of go, okay, this guy wasn't trying to profit off of it. He was just trying to get the information out there. And that maybe it'll start to like be this kind of mythology in the zeitgeist, where people will maybe throw at the bottom of their article about MH370, right? And then as time goes on and we never find this plane where they think it is, they'll go, maybe that was the truth about what happened in the plane, right? So that's my approach. And it's not meaning I'm stopping. I'm shifting gears. And I'm moving towards focusing on learning how the science works. I'll still post other stuff on Twitter and what have you. Maybe do some jokes about MH370 here and there, right? But my passion is about understanding the science. Like, once you've seen that, it's hard to go back to being a normal person. I truly think that we're looking at the answers to the teacher's test here, which tells us that, like, this is how the stuff works. And to me, that's an opportunity that I don't want to miss, right? This is how you catch up to all these other people who are super smart scientists, right? As you see it and you go, okay, now we just have to reverse that, figure out how that works. So that's my opinion. Does that answer your question, Vink?
Yeah, man. Great. I just hope that this is not the last time I'm hearing from you on Twitter. Okay. I just hope you keep on posting some shit or the other about this.
I'll be posting,
All
but
right,
it's probably
man.
going to be boring science stuff. It's funny because everybody loves the drama stuff. That's what gets the most views. When I post all the science stuff about superconductivity, quantum entanglement and stuff, people don't really see that. But I'm not in it for the views anyway. I'm just in it to make the people that are interested in that stuff, for them to take a look at it. So thanks for your question, man.
All right, man.
And real
Have a good
quick,
day.
before
Bye.
we go to more hands, I also just want to thank a few people out there. So UFO Intros, thank you for co-hosting. Appreciate you, man. Mellow Demon has done spaces for me for a long time. Artisan Tony been a nice guy that had me on his podcast. I think I changed part of his opinion. He's been in a lot of my streams hanging out. Vink, you've been here a long time as well. I've seen you. Money Penny, obviously, thank you very much. Even Sal here, who's never come up and spoken, I've recognized you many times as well. If I don't get to you, it's nothing personal. I just want to thank a few of the people that have been a lot around, like Ulrich as well. I've talked to Z Jalapeno. I've seen you in the streams a lot. Sarah is one of the nicest people that I've run across that's out there. Heather Birdie, we've converted here as well. I appreciate you, Heather. JK Philly Fan, I see you down there, man. You're a hero. Pepper Zolin, I'm probably butchering your name, but you've got the best memes out there. William Bill, man, I appreciate you. I hope everything goes well for you. Thank you very much. Prefontaine, I've seen you supporting in a lot of the replies as well. And everybody else as well. If I didn't name you as well, Mary Louise, I see you down there as well. I know you've been following for a super long time. and all the other people that are listening. I just want to make sure that you know that you're appreciated. And let's do a couple more hands. UFO intros. Did you have a follow up? I saw you put your hand back up, and then we can go to
I wanted to say, I'm not sure why you co-hosted me, but I appreciate it. And you know, none of us are perfect. We're all imperfect, more and more apparent as we're all becoming more online. But assuming you are who you purport to be, Ashton, I do have to give you props just for all the hours of research and work you put into this. That alone, I think is commendable for sure. And yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to give you props for that. And then also just, a couple things. If any of you guys listening or anyone have had a paranormal experience and you want to come on my on this platform, this account, we hold spaces like this, except for they're more like one-on-one, like interview style, at least for the first 30 to 45 minutes. And then, we'll bring up people and do Q&A. But yeah, I just, there's not a lot of places you can go to talk about some of these weird things that are becoming a part of our reality without being judged. Things have improved, but even to this day, right, it's hard to find not a lot of people you can talk to about that. So our spaces obviously are judgment free. So if you want to hop on, shoot me a DM and we'll schedule it up. Thanks, Ashton.
Yeah, and I co-hosted you because I figured you'd have like the least amount of people blocked. So yeah, thanks for helping on doing that. Yeah, so let's go to Artisan Tony, man. Thanks for coming up. Artisan, you there, bud? Tony? If not, AJ News.
Shoot. Sorry about that.
Oh, there you go. You're good.
I just want to say great job. I have never seen anything quite as extensive of work that you have, that's been done on this. And that was just a quick compliment, but I had a quick question also. I like the espionage angle. So that being said, and if our government was, our intelligence community wanted that plane and they wanted to create the illusion that it was aliens or something off, you know what I mean? Is there current technology that they could have done it with without it being something, something hard to, I don't mean hard to explain. I mean, could they have pulled this off, giving the impression as sort of a sideshow, to throw people off the trail, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a good question, honestly. And man, I really wish it was an easier answer to sell to people than teleporting a plane, because it's just like, it's so crazy. But yeah, I think that if the videos are fake, to me, it has to be a state-sponsored hack and fake, because I think you'd have to use AI to pull it off. And
I'm not saying the videos are fake. I'm saying I just wonder if there's some other way they could have done,
pulled it off,
performed this act without it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. So first of all, I do think though that if it is fake, to me, the only way it could be is some United States government thing. But yes, in terms of other pulling it off, I mean, the other option would be somehow it's some kind of cloaking event, right? I think there's actually some conspiracy theories out there that argued that, maybe it was some kind of cloaking event or something like that. But the problem is that smoke disappears, right? But maybe you could say, well, maybe the cloaking event puts the battery fire out and that's why the smoke stops. Not really sure. There's just not enough evidence for something like that. And so in my mind, it's like 98% some type of superluminal speed event, teleportation event, 1% like an annihilation event, and 1% some kind of other option, including cloaking, right? I've thought about it a lot. I just couldn't come up with anything else, so that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I was just asking because I hadn't followed it. I've basically just met you like I found out about this like 2 weeks before I met you, so I was curious. I hadn't heard anything like that.
Yeah, that's pretty much all we've got at this point.
I mean, I haven't seen anything like the work that you've done before.
Cool, Tony.
I mean, I think you'd have to go into like the intelligence community to see the amount of evidence that's on a case like that.
Oh yeah.
So anyway,
definitely. And thanks for being here, man. Appreciate you. And maybe we'll do another Pi-Fi at some point in the future.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Real quick, a couple more things. I saw Star Captain Dread join. I've been in spaces with him forever and ever, and he came up with warp nukes, which is still one of my favorite things that's out there. I saw Shai Keenan jump in. I think she jumped out as well, though, but she was one of the first VFX artists that I talked to that helped me help convince me and come up with evidence for why the videos would be either difficult to fake or, if not impossible in general. So let's do a couple more questions here. AJ News, how's it going?
Hey, Ashton, appreciate your work on the case. Obviously, this is a decade-old cold case, and it seems like the main thing, or one of the keys to actually resolving it, is this Rolls-Royce data that's been suppressed by the government. I've got a question. I'll try to keep it brief. It's kind of a two-part, two-parter. One is in regards to the Rolls-Royce data, in terms of what specific government agencies are covering it up and what potentially could be done to kind of crack that. And then the other thing is, you've already touched on this several times, but in regards to the main narratives, the crux of it is kind of this what they call the whisper pings, or the Inmarsat data. Can you just touch on, just once again, talking about how easy it would be to manipulate this data, and talk about the delay that Inmarsat had in terms of providing their data, and how that, how easily that data could have been manipulated as well?
Yeah, the Rolls-Royce data, I'm sure Rolls-Royce knows what's going on with this plane. It's super weird that they put out, there was a Wall Street Journal article that was going to come out, and then they just after retracted and updated the next day, the same time where they start to float, U.S. intelligence starts to float this idea of the plane going to the South Indian Ocean. I believe some people even posted, and I didn't quote in sources because I didn't have any strong sources, but I remember somebody posted one of my replies saying that Rolls-Royce data, engine data, would be going back every 15 seconds. And if they have they know altitude changes, this is stuff that's not coming from satellites. This is coming from engine data. So I think there's a pretty strong reason for why Rolls-Royce never would have released that data, because it probably would destroy the narrative that was being formed. Rolls-Royce, as you can see by some of the contracts that I posted, was directly connected to Lockheed Martin, directly connected to the U.S. intelligence and defense as well. So that seems to be a common theme, especially from Inmarsat as well. The whisper data basically just takes the Inmarsat pings and then tries to take the capabilities of the plane and takes these radio signals and then tries to map out a route. And the problem with this whisper data is that it's the analogy that I've always given is like trying to follow somebody who's got a white shirt on in a sea of white shirts. It's very clear that Richard Godfrey was just trying to bend and mold the data and massage it to a point where you can make sense out of it, right? Where you can say, okay, well, I find a ping here, so I'm going to go ahead and say that this is where the plane went next. And the whole thing, when you look at it, seems to fall apart right after the radar, which is like the strongest real evidence that we have. And so faking that as well, there's one more piece I'm going to do tomorrow about Inmarsat and the SATCOMs. The SATCOMs all had zero-day exploits, all the different types of models of the SATCOMs. It would have been very easy to hack them. If they just change one number around, it can change the complete direction of the plane and where it would have been going. But even more than that, I found an article earlier today that I'm going to post tomorrow in addition to that talks about that they basically released this one graph before May 28th. And the graph makes no sense. Nobody can even understand the graph. They can't figure anything out about the graph. And people are arguing that the graph would show that the plane could have been going west to Diego Garcia, right? And that's where some of these conspiracy theories started coming up. And then they released, quote unquote, the raw data, which they've had at that point like 10 weeks to manipulate and spoof. And Inmarsat itself says, we're confident in the data, assuming that the data is not spoofed or manipulated in any way. It's like, why are they issuing disclaimers like that? You only issue a disclaimer like that if you have weird suspicions about it, right? So I absolutely think beyond a doubt that data is fudged in some way or misinterpreted. They used a novel analysis to come up with a new way to track the plane, and that's where especially that initial data didn't work. They couldn't use anything to make it make any sense. And then it wasn't until later, when they had plenty of time to release that data again after the videos came out, that they started to get a better picture of where that plane could have been. So I think that what will happen is that we're never going to find the plane. The strongest evidence is we just never found the plane, where they claim like it must be along the 7th arc, and they search everywhere and they find nothing, right? So to me, that's the strongest evidence for something being messed around there. But yeah, really good question on that. So I think we'll just do like 3 more people here. We'll do Damien, Scott, then we'll go to AJ, who's been waiting around, and then J. Paul. So Damien, you have a question?
Hey, yeah, thanks, Ashton. Long time follower of your space, well, the spaces you've been in, the YouTube streams, great stuff. I just wanted to give a general comment on the people that are staying silent about this topic, like Ross Coulthart and the likes. I think they're pretty aware. And generally speaking, I think they're aware that there's a lot of eyes on them and a lot of people paying attention to what they're doing, and they understand it's a kind of like a sensitive topic. So, I think it's not too far-fetched to think that maybe that awareness, causes them to be a little bit more cautious with what they acknowledge publicly, and they know that they're a heavy influence on the general perception of the topic. So, once you get into this topic, you get a pretty a general idea about the craziness and the crazy pathways it can lead you on, and pretty much makes everything almost everything possible. So I don't think that their silence speaks to necessarily, discounting, the MH370 stuff or anything like that. I think they just, in some cases, I think they're just like more aware that there are a lot of people paying attention, and, this could go a lot of different ways. And so that sensitivity is kind of like, always hovering around. So I don't think that anybody should be discouraged necessarily by that. They're being silent on the topic. That's all I wanted to say.
No, I think you're right. I think that there's definitely an element to that at play. But I just happen to know for a fact that there are at least some of them. I'm not going to name them, but I happen to know for a fact because I've seen DMs and stuff where they've been asked where they think that some of the videos could be fake. And I don't even hold that against them, right? And that's, I think, what I've started to realize. Early on, I thought people might be disinformation agents of the government. I had no idea, right? When you're talking about looking at this kind of stuff and saying it's real, you're like, you have no clue what could be going on, right? The conclusion I've come to now is that it's more than a lot of people can really accept and rationalize, even people that are, adamant UFO disclosure fans. I think some of them probably think that I'm disinformation, right? People in here might think that too, and I wouldn't even put it past you, right? Because this is pretty out there stuff to be kind of pushing, right? But I'm not in that case, and that's what I would want to tell them is I'm not. I'm just a guy who was a normal person that came across some crazy videos that changed everything about my life. But I think that's another thing too, that we need the science to come out, because when the science starts to come out, if we can teleport a Coke can from one room to another room, like Danny Sheehan says, that's when people are going to start going, oh, okay, maybe these videos can be real. Maybe they'll feel more comfortable to advocate for them or bring them up, right? Now, is that going to happen quickly? I don't think so. I think we're talking years potentially of that happening. That's fine too, I think. And in the meantime, what can we do, right? If we know the videos are real, then we can look into that science. We can begin to push the conversations for what does this mean for disclosure, right? How do we not destroy ourselves with this technology? And those are the kind of conversations I want to be having in the UFO community. But good questions on that, Damien. Let's go to AJ. Do you have any question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's been really interesting following your work, and I think in our lifetime we'll know the answer either way. What happened to the plane? I don't know what time frame you put on that. And just another comment, just about smoking, the smoking gun that I feel that NHR hasn't visited this planet is that there hasn't been one whistleblower firsthand in history out of all countries on the planet who has come forward with the actual evidence. We've had examples of Edward Snowden coming through with evidence, Manning, we've had Julian Assange. So I think the big smoking gun that there is no evidence is that there hasn't been one credible first-hand witnesses on all the countries on the planet. But thanks for your work and thanks for the space. Ciao.
Yeah, and that's something I think about a lot, which is like, we don't even really need non-human intelligence to explain the videos. And then it makes me wonder, like, if this goes all the way back, this technology goes all the way back to the Philadelphia experiment, which is crazy enough, I'm starting to think that it might, where they built a full boat just to be able to try to cloak it and then might have accidentally teleported it. That's a lot of years to be refining this technology, 81 years, right? It could be it could be, I'm not saying it is, but it could be a matter that like the whole alien stuff is just obfuscation so that people don't look into the technology that we've actually been advancing since we dropped the atom bomb, right? Now, my personal opinion is there's probably something else going on there because I still have a hard time wrapping around getting that advanced in 80 years. When we look at those videos, we're looking at some crazy orbs in there, but definitely respect your opinion, AJ. So thank you very much, man. J. Paul, thanks for joining, man.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm nearly 80 years old, and I've been sitting in the back of your classroom since I think late August, September. You have my highest level of gratitude. I think you have really created a very strong cornerstone, not only a cornerstone, but a keystone for bringing together, the whole relativity and the quantum mechanics. I think you've really got the science, and I really greatly appreciate that. And I look forward to your hard truths, beauty, goodness, and total awe. And I think you're absolutely awesome. I need to get your recipe on the martinis, but I'm quite, I'm speechless, and so I listened in silence to a lot of what's going on here. And I would encourage you at some point later, I would really be interested in talking with you about your dreams and what's going on with the unconscious, because in many ways, I think you've opened a portal to the collective, the cultural, and the psychoid unconscious. And I think that's coming out of the cosmos. And I think just keep yourself, get your sleep, watch your dreams, and I hope, and I'll be able to also listen more when you do more hard truths. And one last thing, as Steve Jobs says, you got me onto X. I'd never been on X or Twitter. I thought Twitter was for twits, but it's absolutely wonderful. So thank you much, and we'll be in touch, and travel safe.
Thanks, Jay Paul. And yeah, I appreciate you. I've seen you out there a lot. I wasn't sure if that was you, but yeah, I've seen you in the streams and everything. I appreciate that a lot. I do think that if there is a esoteric aspect to the phenomenon like this, then consciousness and collective consciousness could have a play in it. One of the things that I may be setting up another hard truths to talk to a scientist about the idea of kind of breaking causality, retrocausality, which is the idea that we could have those types of effects be happening, that's just mind warping stuff, man.
Well, I think it's with Jung and Pauli, the whole synchronicity thing. There's some things there, and there's quite a lot to go deep with this. But I'm very grateful for your clarity and making it so people can help us to understand this. But it's really at a turning point, and so I'm as I say, I'm very grateful for all the research you put in here.
Yeah, and I want to talk to some other scientists too. I'm planning some to talk about their various unified field theories, because I think that's really what the key to all of this is. So that'll be fun, and I look forward to having you in them, man.
Yeah, yes, I'll be there. And the Archibald Wheeler, I think, has some really interesting clues to look at. But travel safe. Thank you, Guy.
Yeah, no problem. Swish, I think we'll go to Swish and then Ulrich, and then we'll probably close it out at that. Swish, do you have something?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Now, I'm here in Australia, so it's different time zones, and I apologize in advance if I'm asking a question that you've already answered, but I'd first like to say thank you on behalf of everyone for putting so much time and commitment into trying to figure out with everything what's happened, because I think it's kind of sick, like these governments that know what happened, and the fact they're just not releasing it because they're worried about all sorts of reasons I just think it's just messed up. So thank you very much for that. Keep doing that. Don't listen to any of these haters who say your shit's fake, this and that. Don't worry about them. Keep doing what you're doing, because you got 80,000 followers for a reason. Now, my question is, now again, I apologize. I try to watch as much of your content as I can, but I'm on the other side of the world.
You're fine.
My question is, you've mentioned how the plane might have caught fire, and there was witnesses near the Maldives where it's not too far away from Diego Garcia Island. Now, if the plane did go on fire, do you think there's any chance? I doubt this will happen, but do you think there's any chance of the passengers still being alive? And if so, do you think they will ever return to their homes, or are the governments just going to keep them away forever if they're still alive?
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, and the first thing is that's the first one about the countries covering it up is, I think about it every day, just going, how evil are we, right? Like, we are the baddies in this situation. If we pulled this off, the United States government, the Five Eyes, etc., like, it's unconscionable to disappear a plane full of 239 people and give the families no answers. Like, the families are screaming, crying, attacking people. They know they're being lied to. and we're just using the media to convince the rest of the people these people are just in grief. They can't accept it. When it's like, no, they know there's some bullshit going on, right? And with respect to the passengers, there's a difference between my mind and my heart on this. My heart says that they're alive, that they've been given new identities, they've gone back to their home countries and been told to be quiet, gone into witness protection or the equivalent. My mind tells me that it's very unlikely that anybody survived. Between the fire event, which is lithium-ion batteries are billowing toxic smoke. If you look at, I posted a video of one where it was just one battery in the passenger area, and you could see the smoke. And this is 487 pounds, 221 kilograms of them. So that's a lot of smoke. The oxygen masks only last for up to like 30 minutes at the most. And this plane, we've got it going for at least an hour and 20 minutes before the macroscopic phase conjugation event. And then from talking to the scientists and engineers, like not on the podcast, but offline, they say it's very low probability that people would have come out of this alive from that event happening. So it's pretty dark. But at the same time, the Philip Wood EXIF data picture gives us some hope that maybe some of them survived and got to Diego Garcia or wherever else. And that, hopefully that they didn't, that things went well after that, So, I'm going to hold out hope because I'm an optimistic person. I've always been one, but that's the truth. Okay, thank you for your question, Swish. Okay, so we're just going to do 3 last questions, and then we'll be done for you tonight. I'm going to go to Ulrich, and then Tony, and then we'll end with UFO intros.
Yeah, Ashton, thanks for all the effort and work you put in investigating this case. When I first reached out to you, I was actually coming from a Chan Thomas level connection. Chan Thomas was an electrical engineer by trade, and has known connections to put off. And just like you, he was censored, and there were many censorship attempts made. Can you flesh out as best as you can what on earth the possible or alleged connection is between Randall Carlson, Chan Thomas? Randall Carlson has some advanced propulsion company, and MH370. What is, if it's legitimate, what on earth is the connection here?
I'm not sure there's a connection to Chan Thomas per se, other than him being an electrical engineer and having dug into a lot of stuff and claimed to have been able to detect earthquakes and predict earthquakes. But with respect to the letter to me, the gray-bearded man was definitely Randall Carlson. People were able to figure that out. I didn't know who he was at the time. But Randall Carlson was a gray-bearded man that went on Joe Rogan. I got connections to people that were actually there, and they told me the story of what happened with Malcolm Bendall when he went on. Malcolm Bendall went with Randall Carlson, who's the guy that's been living in the Maldives. It's mentioned in that letter as well. Apparently he's been living in the Maldives for 7 years, working on his thunderstorm generator. I've talked to them. I'll say that my opinion is that device works, and that device, based on Bob Greenier's paper that was published in Nature, can produce over unity, which is coefficient of performance greater than 1. It claims to produce coefficient of performance 1.05, and that there is some type of cold fusion that's happening, cold fusion at high temperatures there. And if there is a connection to the MH370 stuff, then it would be that type of technology is similar to the technology that we see. Now, the obvious connection would be cold fusion. If you think of it, could be like a plasma ball, right? Similar to what we're seeing from these orbs and potentially plasma balls that are out there. I hope to learn more. This summer, I'm going to the Cosmic Summit as a guest and possible guest speaker. And I'm going to meet a lot of those people in person, and I can't wait to talk to them about it and try to figure out what those connections are. So potentially more about the technology and stuff like that this summer. So thanks, Ulrich.
And what was the story? Because it's about the podcast that was never uploaded. Do you mind sharing any of that? We have no idea.
Oh, yeah. I can give you the brief, the abbreviated version. Is that similar to me? Actually, is that he went on. They did the podcast. Apparently, it was a little bit contentious. And that the producer then pulled up a bunch of stuff and claimed that it was debunked, or that it was that Malcolm Bendall might be a scammer or a fraud or something like that. And that's why Joe Rogan chose not to ever publish it, which is weird because when I got asked to go on Joe Rogan and we had the date set up and we were about to book it, Then the next day he comes back and says, oh, I think it might be fake. I don't feel comfortable doing this, blah, 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 right? Which that's kind of a weird connection there as well, because I actually think that this thunderstorm generator like really works. And I think that the world will know it works in the near future as well. So more to come on that.
Ashton, thank you so much, man. Are you cool if I upload push Ashton's Law to the nest up top?
Yeah, push Ashton's Law up there as well. And Ulrich, also thank you very much for coming up with the proving the lie. I think that if you guys listen to the evidence today, so much of the evidence is proving the lie. It's that, yes, okay, you don't have to necessarily believe the videos are real, because we've proven that there's no way that the United States government doesn't know what happened to this plane at an absolute minimum, which means that we know they're lying by admission at a minimum as well. So appreciate that. I also see Amanda join. I want to thank Amanda. She's my favorite follower. She's one of the most kind-hearted people out there. You guys should make sure you watch her. She's been following along for a long time. Okay, Artisan Tony, then UFO intros.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not last because I have a silly question. Okay, my imagination goes crazy sometimes, and I want you to think about this before you come on the Pi-Fi show again. Let's say the military drone has the ability to, well, we know it has the ability to track the objects, right? Right. What if it actually had the ability to remove the objects from the video live, like on the fly?
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be some aspect to that there. Those cameras are like super advanced cameras that can be used to like paint objects as well in aerial surveillance. Yeah, I don't know.
So couldn't it track the atmosphere or, the conditions ahead of it and then just replace the backdrop? Couldn't it just remove those? And what I'm trying to do is get to a simple explanation that some, if some people want to think, if they don't believe that, we can create wormholes or we can teleport, there may be there may be this silly kind of thought. It's just my imagination. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I think that the most logical one is kind of what is it? Ken comes up. Ken Stabbing. He's been investigating for a while, and early on he said, "Oh, I think the videos are real, but I think they've been edited. Maybe they edited in the zap, edited in the orbs, or something like that." To me, the problem with that, and I think that's fine if people want to believe it. Honestly, I don't really care what people want to believe in general, but the problem with that scenario for me is that we never found the plane. So where exactly is the plane?
I'm using the espionage angle though. If they wanted the plane, right?
Yeah, they flew it somewhere else.
Yeah, they would need equipment that would. And I'm not talking about editing the videos. I'm talking about equipment that would be able to replace the image of the plane and the orbs. Just remove it live, on the fly. Does that make sense? The equipment itself would remove the images of the orbs and the plane instantly.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the suggestion, but I'm not.
Again, that's my imagination going crazy, and we can just think about it. And when you're on the Pi-Fi show next, we can talk. You can tell me why.
Sounds good, Tony. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate talking to you. Okay, let's go to UFO intros, man. You're up. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I want to be sensitive to your time. I know you want to wrap this space up. I just was gonna ask, maybe like your top 3 things you learned from this whole experience. But maybe we should do, I don't know, we could do an interview too, and you could talk about that then. But
no, we can go over it now. Yeah,
okay,
so yeah. I mean, the top 3 things. I mean, first thing is the science. Science blew my mind. Science was somewhat consistent with what I already thought, but went so far beyond what I was ready for. I think that also helped me to understand the potential nature of the UFO phenomenon in general, in terms of the advanced technology that's being kept hidden and why it would be kept hidden, right? Is that I always thought it's going to be something darker than what people are ready to accept. And oh boy, is being able to teleport an object darker, because what you need in order for that to be possible is you need the reality to be a matrix. You need there to be an extra dimension, so that we can tap into the underlying ether or vacuum beyond space itself in order to create this negative entropy situation that would allow for this plane to do these types of maneuvers, this types of superluminal speeds. You also potentially then need to understand the idea that space is not empty, that these orbs are extracting energy from the vacuum of space-time that's all around us all the time. And then that basically means that we can achieve stuff like over unity free energy devices as well. It's not free in the sense it's coming out of nowhere. It's that you're borrowing it from the underlying fabric of space-time in your system. And to me, that's revolutionary. And I think that it actually makes sense, but that's one of the biggest things I've learned. And then I've learned as well that not everybody out there is a disinformation agent. I already mentioned this, but that I think that everybody's got their own motivations. The world is not black and white. The world is shades of gray. And if it's shades of gray, then everybody's just doing what they think is the best for themselves, for their financial situation, for their families, and for civilization in general. I think that I've learned the way they hide this stuff is because a lot of people are being paid lots of money to not say anything about it. Some of them are socially awkward and easily manipulated into staying silent. And then some people also just get off on the idea that they know and other people don't know. Because a lot of people say, well, how do you keep this stuff silent, right? And those are generally the ways. And the last one is probably the biggest one, which is that if you're getting paid all that money and you know this stuff's real, the uphill battle that you fight to reveal that is ginormous. Just look at the flack that I've gotten as just being a normal person trying to do all this, right? Now imagine you're one of these scientists or like what was just mentioned, one of these UFO influencers, and you're going to put your neck out there, right? Everybody's going to come at you. And if it turns out that it's not real, then they're going to use that against you all the time. Probably like they'll try to typecast me and use it against me all the time, right? So I think that those are the biggest things that I've learned out here. And yeah, so I think that I see there's a couple other people that want to come up, but I think I'm going to end it here, guys. So I do want to appreciate Taco Loco, who has been out there as well. I do just want to say thank you to everybody who was able to join this here space. We will do other spaces. This won't be the last space I ever do, but it'll probably just be the last evidence review one. Thank you guys for all listening to this tonight. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. And also thanks for listening when you guys could have been listening to the State of the Union, but instead you guys came here and listened to me and talk about MH370. What I want to say at the end is that I've made all this evidence available out there. I am going to do a podcast list of all the podcasts I did, as well as all the pieces that I did on Twitter, where you guys can source them, reference them. You can use this evidence and come up with your own theories, like what Tony was doing, come up with splinter theories if you want to do it. I absolutely support all of that. If people are putting in the effort and the work, I may even retweet your content and get it out there to a broader audience. I just want to be a member of the community that's making this community more positive. The only reason why I did this is because I just wanted to help people, and I wanted to make the world a better place with this technology. And I truly believe that one day in the future we will do that. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a great evening. Thanks. Okay, and then we're going to close the space. Okay, guys, that was an awesome space. So thank you guys, everybody in the chat. I want to thank you guys as well. Sandy, I see you out here. Sick Puppy Izzy, Highness, A Mule, Rhubarb Chief, guys, Where 3, Joe, seeing you a lot. Rotary, seeing you in here so much, man. James and Pig James, if you're around too. Appreciate you guys. His Highness, Alex, Z Jalapeno, Lobster, even the trolls here. Thank you guys all for being here tonight and hanging out with us. Kathy D, thank you very much. Ray Tracer, Wall Street Journal guy. I forgot if that was your total name, but thank you very much, man. I didn't thank you in the space or there as well. Dale, everybody who's been around, Arwen, of course, guys. So thank you guys for hanging out and doing all this. I'm not going to do another stream tonight, but I will do the last MH370 stream tomorrow. PJ Mike, Just Jeff, thanks, Dorian. Appreciate you guys as well. Z Jalapeno, all you guys. So yeah, tomorrow we'll do the last MH370 investigation space or stream, and we'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. We'll have a good time. We'll chill Friday night. It'll be awesome. Take it easy, everybody. Peace.